Welcome in. Happy Hump Day here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Across from me is the talented, fabulous, often running around, busy producer Carlene Bragg. How are you doing?
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I am okay. How are you doing day after election coverage?
Slow down
day?
a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's slowed down a little bit. Yesterday we were running.
We were ripping and running yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It was an adventure, but it was important work because we wanted to make sure that you were informed at home and give you some context. I feel like the afternoon was a great just build up on context on what you should know. And then as we got into our later streams, which we were not here for, the evening streams, it was just real time results, just fast moving stuff. So a lot of information, a lot to decompress from.
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. But look, it continues. The news never sleeps. And with that being said, today marks the longest government shutdown in our nation's history. Day 36 of the government shutdown is today. And there continue to be impacts all over the place. We will continue to explain that and show you how the government shutdown is impacting not only folks locally but across the country. But before we get into some of that, we want to go now to an interview that we did this morning with our guy. I say our guy because he comes on quite often.
Yes.
And gives us a lot of this context, and that is Dr. Michael Bitzer with Catawba College. He's a political science professor. He had a one-on-one with Jay Monreal this morning during a 9 to 11 stream, breaking down what this government shutdown all means. Again, day 36, the longest shutdown in our nation's history. Let's take a listen into that interview in case you missed it.
But first, now that election night is over, back in the spotlight is the federal government shutdown, now entering day 36 and making it the longest shutdown in history, and no clear end in sight. So to help us understand all of this, and as voters soak in what happened last night and how this affects moving into the future and the political landscape, is Catawba College political science professor Michael Bitzer. Thank you for joining us here this morning on Live Impact News, Professor.
My pleasure.
All right, so we're talking about a historic milestone here, unfortunately. Can you put in context for our viewers this morning how we got here?
Well, there is a very clear divide between the two parties, particularly in Congress. Republicans want what is called a clean continuing resolution, or CR, which simply continues to fund the government's operations at the previous level. We're in a new fiscal year. We started on October 1st, and generally Congress should have passed appropriations legislation to authorize federal spending on a number of different programs. That has not happened in a number of years, and they use the continuing resolution dynamic to basically kick the can down the road to try and get to a budget in terms of funding the government. What Democrats have said is we want to continue the subsidies that were given to things like health care insurance and the ACA that are set to expire. And Republicans said, no, we're not going to include that. That's a separate negotiation. And so where we are, the continuing resolution passed in the House because of a simple majority, but in the Senate, you need 60 votes. You need to overcome a filibuster, and there are not 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. Republicans only control 53. They were able to get 3 Democrats to join them, but not close to the 60 votes required. And this is where we are. We're basically in a stalemate over government funding for a number of programs, and we're seeing the impact more and more on the average American.
Now, we are hearing that some senators are maybe talking and making some kind of progress. As far as a timeline, do you think we're going to get there to some passing vote by the end of the week or maybe next week? What's your timeline looking like if you were to predict?
Predictions in politics are always
I know.
precarious, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
But I think what we have heard are these very quiet negotiations that appear to be bipartisan in nature between Republicans and Democrats to find a way to get past this impasse. And I honestly think yesterday's electoral dynamics and the results coming out of the 2025 elections probably are going to put more pressure on Republicans to end this particular stalemate and give Democrats the advantage going into these negotiations. If we see something happen, let's say in the next week, that's probably the indication, but we'll have to also closely watch what the president's tone and temperament is. He's not going to be happy about the election results coming out of last night, and if he can use this budget impasse as a continuing threat, we'll have to see how he decides to work towards either getting this resolved and off his plate, or is he willing to double down and, basically prolong this kind of impasse. We haven't seen, as you said, anything like this, and I think pressure on congressional Republicans is probably going to be greater than on the White House.
Let's talk about, on a state level, the Carolinas and last night's elections and the impacts that maybe we are experiencing here from the shutdown that might not be making the headlines as much. What is your take on that?
Well, I think certainly, we're hearing much more about SNAP benefits, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program that low-income North Carolinians and Americans rely on. Whether that's going to be either half-funded or fully funded, that debate is still very much up in the air, but we're starting to see concrete impacts on Americans because of this government shutdown. One of the big things looming in the next couple weeks is holiday travel. Thanksgiving is always known as one of the most intense travel periods in America. And if folks like TSA agents, if air traffic controllers are still not getting paid after 2 months, could we see further long lines at Charlotte Douglas? Could we see, the impact there? I think that that's probably going to be a pressure point to resolve the issue before we get to Thanksgiving. But again, no predictions being made in any way, shape, or form over this issue.
And as federal workers, air traffic controllers, TSA agents are missing paychecks and the like, at what point does this political cost really become too high for either party? Or are we there yet?
I think we're there. I think the lesson learned from yesterday's elections is that if folks were considering a potential Democratic wave in 2026, we already got the first cresting of that potential blue wave in the midterm election. I mean, to look at our neighbor to the north, Virginia, and to see out of 130 counties and cities, 126 of them shifted much more Democratic than they did just a year ago. That to me is the canary in the coal mine, particularly for Republicans, to say we're looking at a classic midterm election. The dynamics in 2026 means that probably the president is going to be highly unpopular. There are concerns about the economy, and North Carolinians show that particular concern in the latest Catawba YouGov poll. Those two factors combined mean oftentimes very bad results for the party in power, and that party in power this year are the Republicans in D.C.
How do you see this ending? What are some of the realistic scenarios?
I think the most realistic scenario is going to be within the Senate a rump group of Republicans who are probably more moderate, say someone like Tom Tillis, will broker a deal to get to 60 votes to reopen the government, to provide those subsidies for health care and the ACA benefits. And then the question becomes what will happen in the U.S. House of Representatives. The Speaker has been very adamant. He is not going to deal with the ACA benefits and subsidies until the government is reopened. But does the pressure of Tuesday and the vulnerability of some Republicans in the House mean they are going to basically bite the bullet and pass whatever the Senate proposes? Then it goes to the president. What does he do? Does he basically sign off on this and they get this past this to go into 2026? I'm not real sure what the dynamics are going to be like, but I wouldn't be surprised by any of those scenarios.
Yeah, after night's elections and the Democrats winning big in some of those key races, definitely I can see sends a message to Washington, as the president is. It seems to be distancing himself a little bit, saying that, well, I wasn't on the ballot last night.
He can say that he wasn't on the ballot, but I think all the signs point to, indeed, his name may not have been on the ballot, but his policies and he were on the ballot of the voters' minds.
Is this political theater that we're witnessing?
When isn't politics theater nowadays?
More so, yes.
Yes, I think certainly they're if Republicans are thinking about waking up this morning and thinking, all right, how do we get out of this situation? They're going to have to basically make the shift themselves, and I think that this is probably the warning sign to them to say we need to move back to what Americans are really concerned about: the economy, affordability, all of these issues. But the president is known for being somebody who is very stubborn when he comes to an issue or an idea. He is willing to change at times, but he is really kind of doubling down and saying, I'm not going to reopen the government until I get what I want. That's not how this process works, and the pressure may be there for him to change and shift his tone.
Yeah, we'll certainly be keeping a close eye on that. More to be revealed. Professor Michael Bitzer from Catawba College, appreciate your time this morning, and we expect to hear from the House leadership as well. They've been like clockwork, 10 o'clock every morning since the shutdown started.
Good to be with you.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
Always some great insight there from Dr. Bitzer. A lot of we go to him for a lot, so always great to hear from him. Also, I want to point out Scott Huffman is another guy that we go to out of Winthrop.
We'll hear from him tomorrow.
Hear from him tomorrow. Yes, I forgot. The calendar's been so busy. We have a lot to cover. We want to continue this discussion on the government shutdown. Day 36 of the government shutdown. Millions of people are impacted. We have Megan Bragg here in studio. It's been a while since we had you here in studio.
I know,
Feels
you
like
guys, but I'm happy to be here. Happy to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So you were tracking the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were all working in the business when the first, I guess the record was initially set back in 2018.
2018.
I say this because when we think about a record when it comes to the government shutdown, you think about, this is before my time. But it's just in recent memory.
Right. And I think that the government has been, if I have my date right, it's the 1970s, but 1976, I think, is when they implemented this budgetary process and shut down and all of that stuff. So it all dates back to then. But like you were saying, Nick, 2018, it was December 2018, January 2019 was the longest one. That was 35 days. And so we kind of wanted to look in and compare the two for today and see, what the difficulties were back then, what it cost us back then and to now. So lots of numbers I'm going to throw at you.
I love the numbers. I love it.
That's what I'm in the business of, is verifying numbers and all that fun stuff. Okay, so let's talk about 2018 to 2019. December to January, that was 35 days long. That was during the Trump administration as well. Now, the disagreement was about the border. If you can remember, yes,
okay.
President Trump wanted more funding to build the southern border. Democrats were not about that, and so that was kind of the issue with that spending bill is more money into that. So that shutdown cost around $3 billion GDP, which is gross domestic products, meaning how our overall, economy is. So they suspect that it was an estimated $3 billion. So it affected 800,000 federal workers, 380,000 were furloughed, and then 420 worked without getting paid. Wow. So that was 2018. 2019, now the interesting thing was SNAP at that time was still in place and being funded. However, there were larger gaps between the funding, but the USDA did get contingency funds to fund SNAP back then. Now looking here, what's the issue here? It's all about affordable health care, that Obamacare.
Those premiums,
those premiums, that runs out at the end of this year. So really what it is Democrats want a discussion of how are we going to keep this going? Those premiums going to be higher, whatever. Republicans are kind of like, you know what, we'll talk about it after. Let's just get a spending bill in place. So that seems to be the disagreement this time around. And right now there are 750 workers on unpaid leave. So a lot more than the last one, and SNAP is not, as we know, not being funded at this point. So some differences overall, kind of, the same thing of Democrats, Republicans really not getting along, pointing the finger at each other. I mean, if you've been listening to any coverage, you'll hear it's the Democrats' fault or it's Republicans' fault.
We listen to it every day.
Yeah.
And it's just like, at some point,
It's a lot.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
And like, when do we come together? But so that is what is going on with the two and the different differences. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is that if we go back to the presidencies, Ronald Reagan
Before our time, by the way. I
Before
just wanna
our
mention
time.
that.
This is before our time. Ronald Reagan had 8 separate times that there was government lapse in spending. So 8 times, yes. Wow. But the longest was only 3 days. So it's not like it was a month or anything like that. It was 3 days, but still 8 times. He's the one with the most times that the government has been obviously not funded. However, President Trump has had the longest now with 36 days, but only twice.
He set the record and broke the record.
Yes.
Man, wow. And it seems like a lifetime ago. I was working in Atlanta when the last the one before this one that was the actual record for the longest shutdown was set back in 2018, 2019.
Right.
And this one just feels a little bit more like an agreement is, not as close as the one before.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm trying to articulate it in the best way.
Yes, there's still, as it seems, a very standstill. No one's budging, right?
Yeah.
And I guess too, like, you just think about all these, federal workers, and I keep thinking about them and people on SNAP and people who need benefits, and really it's just, so many people are in limbo right now, and I'm sure I felt that way the last shutdown too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sure we all did. But, years go by and you don't remember quite the last one.
Yeah.
And so...
and we had a pandemic in between
I
that
know.
too.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. So it's just, wow, like lots going on. But that is the two differences between both of them. And it's just very interesting to look at. Yeah.
Interesting to see coming off of this election.
Yep.
Where we have a lot of those key in those big races, those key races from Virginia to California to New York City.
New York City, yeah. That was a big one last
big
night.
Democrat sweep there in those races. So we'll see how that impacts the shutdown.
Yep,
moving
absolutely.
Forward. I always ask this question, Meg. When can folks?
6:15.
Yeah, before I could even ask.
See, I'm ready for you now.
Look, I'm not trying to stump Meg at all. I'm not trying to stump Meg. Really interesting insight on the government shutdown now / what has happened in the past. Meg, thank you as always. always.
Thank you.
Haven't said this in a long time, but get a little smarter when we have Meg. When Meg comes in, I mean that seriously. Shout out to Verify. Shout out to the work her and Michaela do
Thank
on
you. Yeah.
Verify. So, okay, let's take a quick break. Carlene gave me the signal. This is the signal. So we're going to take a 2-minute break. We'll be back here again in 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We want to go now to Washington, D.C., where happening right now, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat out of New York City, is speaking on the presser. He's speaking as right now, today marks the longest government shutdown in our nation's history. Let's take a listen into what he is saying.
On swing seats, defending our frontline incumbents, all of whom are on their way to winning re-election, and flipping red seats blue. And the DCCC has never gotten involved in primary dynamics that involve safe Democratic seats, and that policy has not changed.
Thank you. Earlier today, President Trump said the shutdown had probably hurt Republicans in elections, especially in Virginia. I'm wondering if that gives you any encouragement that this could kind of bring Republicans to the table for negotiations to end the shutdown.
The responsible thing to do, and this has been the case since October 1st, is for Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, and John Thune to sit down with Democrats on Capitol Hill who represent half the country so we can reopen the government, enact a bipartisan spending agreement that actually makes life better for the American people, including as it relates to driving down the high cost of living because America is too expensive, and decisively addresses the Republican healthcare crisis that is crushing people all across America. Working class America, small town America, rural America, urban America, the heartland of America, and black and brown communities throughout America. Republican policies are crushing people, particularly as it relates to the cost of living and healthcare, and the American people are rejecting that extremism, and we saw it on full display from coast to coast and everywhere in between last night.
To follow up on that.
Last question.
To follow up on that, what message do last night's election results send to Senate Democrats who were going into last night? Some of them were starting to talk about caucus, compromises, things like that. So what message does kind of the overwhelming support for Democrats last night and focus on healthcare send to them?
Well, we've said from the very beginning that we will consider anything in good faith that emerges from the Senate that is bipartisan in nature, that reopens the government, that decisively addresses the Republican health care crisis, particularly as it relates to extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and that actually involves a spending bill that makes life better for the American people, not worse, which is why we have continued to maintain, and Senate Democrats have shown great leadership, led by Chuck Schumer, that we will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. That was our position in September. That's been our position throughout October, and it remains our position in November. Thank you. One second.
All right, so that was Representative Hakeem Jeffries speaking on the shutdown, also speaking on the election results from yesterday. So that press conference just wrapped up. We heard from House GOP leaders earlier today, right? Okay. So we're expected to get more reaction from lawmakers today. But we want to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back in here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Look, we've been talking a lot about elections. We've been talking about government shutdowns. We want to take a break from that for just a moment to talk about an important day that's happening here in Charlotte. Brain Talk Day in Charlotte. I got invited to it this weekend.
Sure did.
And to
Just
counter
moments
that,
ago.
just moments ago, and to counter that, I invited them to Charlotte Marathon. So
To watch you strut.
is it strut?
Yeah.
Is it a strut? Okay, all right. Let me
If
introduce
you
our-
trained enough for this marathon, it's strutting. You know what I mean? Loud and proud.
That's
you better
fair.
be strutting in
That's
that,
fair.
that
Well, let me
marathon.
introduce our guest. Carlene's not helping my case. All right. She is a nationally certified speech language pathologist. She's the owner of Serenity Speech Therapy, which is a private telepractice company. And she is the founder of Brain Talk Foundation. Dr. Kelly Utenham. I got your name right this time. Last time I fumbled through it, but I got it right. Thank you for coming back. You were here. You reminded me you were here back in September. Talking about something totally different. But thank you for coming back.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
From 1 to 10, what is your excitement level about Brain Talk Day?
10 plus.
10 plus?
Yes.
I asked you if you were nervous about it.
No, I'm
Just-
excited about it.
And you were like, yeah. I'm like, man, I would be nervous because I have to have my hands on everything. I have to like really plan out, and I get stressed out about
I've done my best to
Okay.
relinquish control and let my team do more this year. It's an annual event, and so I'm not nervous. I'm more excited, and I get
Yeah.
my students involved more now, and I'm very excited about this event.
All right, so folks who are listening, they're probably like, what is Brain Talk Day? Can you explain what that is?
Yes. So Brain Talk Foundation is my nonprofit where we have a mission of raising awareness around concussion, traumatic brain injury, and CTE in athletes, but other at-risk populations. So domestic abuse survivors, police officers, which is what I was here for in September, and military personnel, as well as neurodegenerative conditions like dementia, Parkinson's disease, and just raising awareness for society so that we can kind of reframe the way that people approach these invisible injuries and this silent epidemic of brain injury where people are surviving. And so Brain Talk Day is our community offering so that people can come out. It's a free event. They get to learn about the brain and brain health. And we are going to talk about the risks in brain injury. There will be concussion goggle simulations so people can see what it's actually like to do some ADLs, or what we call activities of daily living, which is essentially anything that you do during the day. So we'll have different exercises and activities that people will be able to try with these concussion goggles on. We have had people who have had concussions to put them on and say this is exactly what it's like. So it's pretty close to that simulation. We'll also have breakout sessions where we have professionals who are going to talk to attendees about mindfulness, massage. We also have a fantastic company called True Brain who's going to be there, and they have a very innovative product that actually scans the brain so you can see it real time, and it turns like a static view of an X-ray or a CT into how they describe it as a movie. So there's moving, there's actual sound that you can see. They describe if you're grinding your teeth, how you can actually see that show up on screen. So they will be there, they'll be giving screens and scans. It's more proactive, so you can see what's happening to your brain now in real time versus someone has a diagnosis of suspected CTE or traumatic brain injury or Parkinson's. You can see what's happening now and get a good idea of what's going on. And then we have the amazing Dr. Elena Davis, who is our keynote this year, and she is the chair of the speech department at Howard University. So I'm very excited. We call each other we're brain besties because we're both in this space. And she's going to come down and she's going to bring her students from Howard, and they are going to mix it up and participate, and we're very excited about this event.
What is it about? Well, I guess I should ask for folks who don't know. How long have you been doing? How long have you been doing Brain Talk Day?
This is our second annual.
Second? Okay, wow.
Yes, yes.
How does this compare, or how is this different from maybe last year? Or how has it grown?
Last year, well, there's definitely been growth. More people have heard about it, so more people are going to be coming. The guests that we have this year, the panelists, they are different, but even just as powerful as last year. The sessions that we're going to have, they've grown. We're having more sessions this year, and the students, I would say my students are much more involved this year in the planning.
What should people who may be thinking about, or maybe thinking about plans for this weekend, and they're watching this and they're like, okay, all right, Brain Talk Day, I think I want to go. What do you hope they take away from this event?
The event, I hope that they take away awareness, because that is the whole point of this. People hear doctor and they hear concussion and they hear, I want to talk to you, and there's a presentation, and a lot of times they have that that perception that I'm trying to stop them from playing, or I want to remove sports from their life, or whatever it is that they, is causing them to be at risk. And that's not the case. I really want people to come, I want them to learn, and I want them to do with the information what they will, what's best for them, what's best for their families. But the huge piece of this that really sparked Brain Talk Foundation and Brain Talk Day is when I give my talks, I travel all around the country and hopefully one day the world, raising awareness about this topic. And what I always hear is, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known. And that typically comes after somebody has experienced the loss of someone, whether by suicide or their loved one they're just not the same anymore. And I hear that a lot too with brain injury. It's like they're not the same as they once were. So if people can come to Brain Talk Day on Saturday and learn about the brain, learn about the signs and symptoms of these kinds of brain injuries, a lot of them show up like ADHD, a lot of them show up like ODD, ADD, PTSD, lots of Ds. And when you have that situation and you're being misdiagnosed potentially, that means that a child or an adult could be placed on a medication that they don't necessarily need. And what does that do to the brain? Providing them with resources to other professionals that can help them in that space, like the True Brain company that's going to be there, like yoga, mindfulness, even stretching and massage. We're going to have a great massage therapist there who's my actual personal massage, so I know he's great.
All right, now I'm serious about going. Okay.
Yeah. Come on, he's going to be doing demos and stretches and talking about mindfulness. And so there are just multiple facets of brain injury and recovery that people don't even know about. There isn't a guide for it, so if someone does get a brain injury, there's so many questions, and lives can change in such a significant way. And so Brain Talk Day is a way to come, ask questions, learn some things that you may not have known or even considered, and then hopefully motivate people to want to push and ask for more information on protocols, ask for more education, because right now there isn't like a set regiment or protocol or requirement for an in-depth look into brain injury or that risk. So there could be something where it's like, yes, you have to educate, but there's no stipulation as to how. So it could be something as simple as, I've printed off this sheet that has information on concussion, sign it and give it back to me. But there's nothing about second impact syndrome or SIS. There's nothing about CTE specifically. Correct, yeah. And there's nothing about post-concussive symptoms or syndrome. And so all of these things, I would think, I mean, I'm a former athlete, so I love sports, lifelong sports fan, but I would think that parents, even the athletes themselves, would like to know the risk of these things before they take the field or the court. And again, do with that information what you will. It's not a banishment or punishment or anything like that. I just think that people have a right to know the risks so that they can identify those signs and symptoms and then find the proper channels for help if that's what they're needing.
I feel like it's a trend, a good trend. I think people want to be healthier now. They want to get in shape. They want to start running. They want to start eating healthier. But there's still a fear of knowing your health, like knowing how you're doing, how you're feeling. Do you still see that? And for folks who may be skittish to come to an event like this, because I don't want to do a scan of my brain. I don't want to know what's really going on. I was having a great Saturday, and now what do you say to folks who feel like that?
I say it can be scarier not to know, because if you do find out, then you can potentially buy yourself more time, and you can find avenues for treatment. So people, are out here surviving with these invisible injuries. I call it a silent epidemic. It is. And so I hear about people who, there are simple fixes. We call them compensatory strategies. Well, for the professionals, it could be a simple fix, but it can be something as simple, and I'll, put quotes around that, something as simple as utilizing your AI devices like Siri or Alexa or Google, and using that for making a grocery list or your schedule, making sure that you are abiding by a schedule. So things that could be taken for granted, and that also depends on what kind of injury that they're experiencing, what kind of symptoms they're experiencing. It could be something like problem solving, it could be something like sequencing. So putting together an outfit for you to leave, that could be an extremely daunting task because of the multiple steps that requires. And a lot of things that we with healthy brains that haven't been concussed or severely concussed or repeatedly concussed, that we can really take for granted.
What are some of the conversations you've had, especially, maybe last year's event, where maybe it's a parent, their kid plays football, or somebody who's looking to get into law enforcement, or maybe it's a caregiver who has a loved one with dementia. What are those conversations like after maybe last year's event, or even not even take away last year's event, like just in general when you talk about brain health?
Shock and awe.
Okay.
And gratitude.
Okay.
A lot of gratitude. So people finding out what they should be looking out for. Parents are grateful because they learn not to explain away certain symptoms. So a parent who could explain away migraines. I've had a parent on my podcast who has described their daughter being severely concussed by taking a tennis ball to the eye, actually.
Wow.
Knocked her unconscious. So people always think football. Yeah, tennis can be dangerous. This young lady had a very ferocious serve, and the guest from my podcast, her daughter ended up getting hit, and their family has a history of migraines. And so when the daughter was complaining, and the number one cause or the number one symptom or complaint with a concussion is headaches. And so when she kept saying, like, Mom, I've got this headache, my head hurts really badly, the mom was explaining it away as, well, we all have migraines in the family, and so she's talking to her about medications, but there was an underlying cause, which was the concussion. And so she ended up learning about neurooptometry, which is, again, another profession that is a specialist in brain injury and recovery. And the neurooptometrist told her that she had been hit so severely that she was at risk for retinal detachment. And the parent, the guest that was on my podcast, she had no idea. And so parents have a sense of gratitude of knowing what to keep an eye out for and not explaining things away. Caregivers, so it could be the child of someone who does have dementia, they are grateful for different strategies that they can learn so that being a caregiver doesn't have to be as laborious or taxing on them, because when you become a caregiver for someone who has a neurodegenerative condition, that really changes your life. It changes the relationship that you have with that person that you're caring for. And so a lot of gratitude, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of, oh my goodness, I wish I would have known. And thank you for telling me for these events and these talks that I do.
Does it get overwhelming? Because you have this foundation, this nonprofit. You run your own business. You have a podcast. You do other podcasts as well. Does it all get overwhelming for you? And then you hear these personal stories.
Yes.
I mean, it's just a lot. Does it get overwhelming?
It is a lot, but I really feel like I'm in my purpose. And so I don't end up getting tired of it. And so when I hear people who reach out or who professionally slide into my DMs or send me an email, or my podcast guests, hearing these stories really makes a difference in my life. It continues to fuel me to keep doing this very intensive work. But hearing these people's stories continues to motivate me, and it keeps me in that space of like, this is why I do what I do. And there are so many people who experience this silent epidemic, and they don't have a voice. And so I am a millennial through and through, so I'm not
Millennials, shout out to millennials.
Right, shout out to millennials. I wasn't born to do the social media thing, but because it has been such an amazing tool to help connect me to people around the world, I do have a social media presence, and I use that platform to help share people's stories, and whether that be through the podcast or through going live, which I don't love to do by myself, but I will do those things, and that is a sacrifice that I make of putting myself out there because I have this knowledge, and I can help to change the lives of other people in a better way. So it can be tiring, but I have such strong motivation to keep going that it doesn't fatigue me.
Where can folks find more information about Brain Talk Day? I want to make sure they get it. Sometimes we leave it off. We have good in-depth conversations. We leave off the important stuff. So where can folks register and give time, location? all
Yes,
that
yes,
stuff?
yes. So you can register through my website, which is braintalkfoundation.org. You can also go directly to Eventbrite and search Brain Talk Day. And it will be at Northeastern University's, our Charlotte campus, where I am a full-time assistant faculty member, adding that onto all the things that I do. But pouring into this next generation is very important to me. But it will be on campus, which is 2151 Hawkins Street. Come to the parking deck, take the elevator to the 8th floor, and you will be greeted by the Brain Talk Day team. And you have to register to make sure that you come so that we have enough seats and food for everybody. Food will be provided. So make sure that you register before you come. But we would love to have you, and I'm so excited that you're going to be coming out for a little bit too.
And I'm so excited for you and the team to be coming to Charlotte Marathon in 2 weeks.
Yes, absolutely. See, I offered a 10 a.m. start time. You said
7:20.
7:20, but I can make that time.
Park at 6 a.m.
What?
You know, you got to make sure you find parking. It's going to be like 11,000 people.
6 a.m.
Find parking at 6 a.m. and then, eventually make your way where you could see the race.
Okay. What time does it end?
I guess it just depends on what time I finish. So if I start, let's say about 7:20, 7:30, because there's different corrals, right?
Okay.
Depending on your time. And so say about 9:30-ish.
Okay. I'm going to be there.
All right.
Okay.
I'll be at Brain Talk then. No, but it's seriously a great event. Dr. Kelly, thank you for stopping by. Thank you and the team for stopping by once again. You're always welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Thank you.
Carlene, do we want to take a break? All right, we're going to take a quick break here on Live Impact News. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNT Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Another beautiful day outside today. I got a chance to step outside for a little bit. Let's check in with our full forecast right now. Let's take a listen to that.
Well, Well, good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm. It's another gorgeous day today across the Carolinas, but today is even a little better because temperatures will be warmer. We'll be rising to nearly 75 degrees. The warmest day in my 7-day forecast. Now, it is going to be a little breezy at times, so if you have any plans outside, yeah, it'll be occasionally breezy with some of those winds gusting around 20-25 miles an hour. But if we get a view like this, as you can see in Dallas, I think we can handle a little bit of wind. Now, as we're heading towards the rest of our work week, we'll stay very mild. Even this weekend, no big problem. Small chance for a stray shower or two on Sunday. And then next week, we have some big changes ahead. It is going to get real cold, feeling a little like winter time because we have an Arctic blast of cold air heading our way. We'll get to that, but really throughout this morning and early this afternoon, it's been very quiet on our satellite and radar, meaning we all get to enjoy a nice, comfortable day. Yesterday was nice as well. We topped off around 69 degrees, around 70, didn't quite make it to 70. And today, not only will we make it to 70, but even a little bit warmer. We're turning up the heat, but it's because it's going to be a little breezy, especially this afternoon. Those winds, they're going to be moving into the southwest, so because of the direction of the wind, those temperatures will increase. Even after dinner time or so, still pretty comfortable into the 60s. Now, the sky will remain clear throughout the day today and overnight, so the next few days will be absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful day there in Blowing Rock with a high of 66 degrees, 74 in Morganton, 73 out there in Lenoir. Across Charlotte, we'll be nearing 75 degrees for us, Gastonia, even there in Lincolnton, and then 73 there in Monroe and Lancaster. So overall, a good day to spend some time outside. Now, if you're thinking, all right, you want to get outside, rake your leaves, might not be the best day to do that because of the wind. You can see those winds continue to be pretty steady throughout the afternoon. Again, moving from the southwest, the strongest winds gusting around 30 miles an hour up in the mountain locations. They'll start to die down overnight. And again, skies will remain clear while we're asleep, which means tomorrow morning sunrise will be early, but at least it's going to be a beautiful one. We'll be waking up to temperatures right around those mid to upper 40s. Now, the next 3 days, no complaints. Upper 60s, low to mid 70s. Now, that is going to feel nice. And really this weekend, not too bad either. Only a 20% chance for a stray shower on Sunday, but we're watching two different cold fronts. The first one is a pretty weak cold front going to bring some moisture into our area. However, the second one, this is going to be the one that brings in that blast of cold air. Not only that, but it could have just a little bit of moisture with it, and if it does, we could see a little snow up towards the mountain locations. Now, really the most impressive part of the secondary cold front is that cold air back behind it. But because that high pressure that'll be building behind it, at least it is going to be sunny. I mean, look at how big of a difference that is. 72 degrees on Sunday with a high of only 48 on Monday. And those high temperatures are struggling to warm, but look at those overnight lows. Those kids are going to be cold waiting at the school bus stop. So make sure they're definitely prepared for the cold elements. And if you have any outdoor pets, make sure they are as well. It's going to be cold here in the city, but look at the mountains with air temperatures dropping down into the teens next week. So bottom line is that it is going to change a lot, especially once you add that wind on top of it. That's when the wind chills could even dip down into the teens and possibly some single digits. There's our Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. So bottom line is get outside, soak up the sunshine, those nice mild afternoon highs into the 70s, because next week it is going to start out quite chilly. Have a great day.
All right, so we want to get to a bit of breaking news that we just got into our newsroom. I want to start with the tweet. So Representative Mark Harris, he's a congressman representing the 8th district here in North Carolina. So the 8th district, so think about, and I have the district map pulled up, think about Union County, parts of Union County, Montgomery County, Stanley County, all the way into Richmond County. That's sort of the 8th congressional district. And so he posted on X, and it reads, breaking, at NC Governor, which is Josh Stein's X page, must stop stalling and send in the National Guard to Charlotte to address the violent crime crisis. My colleagues and I stand with Charlotte's police union, which requested Guard support a month ago. Send the Guard, secure Charlotte, save NC. So here's the full letter, and we have it into our newsroom. I'm not going to read the entire letter because it's 2 pages long, but here's the letter right here on your screen. So it reads, "Dear Governor Stein, we are deeply concerned regarding your consistent refusal to grant the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Fraternal Order of Police's request to deploy the North Carolina National Guard to assist law enforcement in addressing the growing violence crisis in Charlotte. As you know, the situation in our state's largest city has become increasingly dire. Recently, the city faced 8 homicides in 7 days. The murder rate in uptown Charlotte is now 200% higher than it was a year ago." And so, again, that letter goes on for another page or so, but that's just part of that letter from Representative Mark Harris there. But again, we just got that into the newsroom, and we wanted to get it to you. We have not heard from Governor Stein. I'm asking this out loud. Have we heard from Governor John Stein?
We have not, but he speaks at 2 o'clock in Winston-Salem on another previously scheduled event, so we'll be monitoring that for reaction. And
Okay.
President Trump is scheduled to appear in Miami in minutes, and we'll monitor
Yeah.
that for any reaction.
Okay, so we could have live reaction from this letter. Again, you talk about the National Guard, Chicago dealing with the National Guard, Memphis National Guard. There has also been National Guard troops sent to Portland, Oregon, and it's been a big point of contention for governors in those states and lawmakers, some lawmakers in those states as well. So we'll see what comes from this letter. All right, so we want to move on now. Carlene, where do we want to go to? I know we had a couple of things.
Air travel.
Talk air travel as it concerns the shutdown. So I've heard some of the stories of folks, even in my personal life, flights canceled. They checked in and the flight is canceled. It's because air traffic controllers calling off, air traffic controllers not being paid because of the government shutdown. And so it's impacting travel all over. And this is as we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving.
James, you said, we were talking before this, you're considering actually changing your plans.
Yeah,
ahead
so
of it.
this weekend my parents are going to New York from Charlotte. They're flying, but my wife and my kids and I are going to Florida, and we're driving because we didn't want anything to do with the air travel. And then we all have travel booked together in December, where we're all currently slated to fly, but I'm already wondering if I need a
If you
contingency
need to change
plan.
it, yeah, I bet a lot of people are.
Yeah. So it is as this government shutdown goes on, it is a tricky situation for a lot of folks. Jay Monreal had an interview this morning. Who did she?
She's Katie Nastro. We've talked to her several times.
Okay.
She's a travel expert with Going. She
Okay.
kind of talked about, hey, if you're kind of put in this scenario where these delays are happening, what do you do? What should you expect if you are like James and
Yeah.
you have something on the books already? So it was a really great interview.
Yeah, let's take a listen in case you missed it.
Watching live, there a press conference from the House GOP leadership on this 36th day of the federal government shutdown. You heard mention that a lot of workers are affected and impacted trying to get them back to work. And that is having a ripple effect on the Americans at large, the population, especially when it comes to travel. And as we look at the holiday travel season between Thanksgiving and New Year's, it is really, we expect to feel the pinch here if this continues much longer. So Katie Nastro from Going, our travel expert, our go-to here, is now joining us live on Live Impact News. And Katie, you said that you're feeling this, you're seeing this from other media outlets talking to you, and that it is the topic du jour, isn't it? What are you telling everybody?
Yeah, look, Jen, it is one of those time periods that we have never seen before because this is now the longest shutdown in history. And what we know from previous shutdowns is the theme that we've talked about nonstop is the longer this lasts, the bigger the impacts are going to be for travelers. And what I can say is we've really been sort of lucky in the way of cancellations up until this point, but late last week, we saw the compound of weather and these impacts of the government shutdown come together in a very bad way, where we saw over 1,000 cancellations across the nation at any given point at any given airport. And because of the impacts of the shutdown, everything is just even more stressed. And so what we can tell for travelers is that this is likely going to get much worse in the coming weeks. And we are wouldn't be surprised if this kept or continued through Thanksgiving, which would be incredibly, incredibly messy.
Oh my goodness. Do you see any regions of the country that are impacted more than others?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that New York has seen its fair share of ATC staffing triggers in the last few weeks, as well as Texas. You know, Houston is actually grappling with the impacts of the shutdown in the way of TSA. In the last 2 days, they've seen TSA delay times reach well above 3 hours at some point, just for processing, just even to get through, to be able to get to your gate. That's not even when you get to your gate when we see those impacts due to staffing triggers. So we're now starting to see the impacts in areas for TSA delays. And really, there's no clear pattern as to where this has been happening or could happen in the future. But we will say that areas like Phoenix, New York, Texas, these are all places that we've heard of multiple occasions of seeing impacts on travelers.
So many areas around the country. And like you said, as we get closer to Thanksgiving, that's really going to be a nightmare, anticipated nightmare. So what can travelers do? Anything?
Yeah. Well, you know, I hate the term pack your patience because this is like playing Russian roulette. There is just no idea when you're going to have to pack your patience. But I would suggest to travelers a few things. One, you know, if you can at this point, try to consider driving if possible, especially due to the fact that gas prices are at a multi-year low. So that's one sort of bright spot in terms of alternate transport. As well as, if you can, try to target an early morning flight. I'm talking 6, 7, 8 a.m. even. Those early morning flights haven't seen the impacts due to the shutdown nearly as much. You know, they really start to compound the later that you get into the mid-morning, into the late afternoon, when you see a lot more business people traveling and just leisure travelers in general. So we want people to wake up a little bit earlier, give themselves the best odds at getting out on time. You know, early morning flights, just by the data, have a higher on-time arrival rate by 25 to 30 percentage points versus those afternoon or evening flights. So while it's not a magic bullet, it is sort of your best case scenario for navigating these uncertain times.
And when it comes to getting a refund, you know, a lot of customers or passengers, I should say, if they're waiting for so long, and if it's the mechanical versus weather, what are the rules when it comes to getting a refund or an exchange? And is a government shutdown at all factored into any of this?
Yeah, one bright spot is the DOT regulations of when you are significantly delayed or can't have your flight outrightly canceled, you are still protected, regardless if this is due to impacts from the shutdown or weather, which is the most common cause of why we see flights getting any disruptions to begin with. So we want you to know that you still are protected. However, what I will say is that the significant delay, it has to be 3 hours or more for this to be in effect. So if you've been waiting 90 minutes, 2 hours, unfortunately you don't have any recourse there to opt for that refund or to get rebooked on a new flight. But we have heard of airlines sort of prompting customers when it is looking like the delay will continue on, if they want to make a rebooking. I've had this happen to me in-app, where the airline will actually give me an alternate flight if I wanted to take, but that's not across the board. They don't necessarily have to. But we just want travelers to remember, if you are significantly delayed by 3 hours or more or outrightly canceled, you can get rebooked on a new flight, or just decide I don't want to travel at all and take that refund back to your method of payment.
Katie Nastro from Going, thank you for weighing in. Good information, as folks are definitely seeing the impacts now as we are into this 36th day of the government shutdown. TSA agents affected, as well as air traffic controllers. Katie, thanks a lot. See you soon.
All right, so that was Jane's one-on-one there with a travel expert when it comes to impacts of the shutdown. As far as air travel, I know a lot of questions are being asked about that. And so as we learn more, of course, we will update you here on Live Impact News and here on WCNC Plus. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about Election Day. So some big races, not only across the country, but here locally in Mecklenburg County. 1 cent sales tax transit referendum. I feel like it has a few different names on the ballot. A lot of folks talking about it, and we spoke with a lot of people, voters specifically, about this referendum. A lot of thoughts on, and people seem split. Obviously, you can't talk to everybody in Mecklenburg County.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be impossible. But the folks we spoke with felt strongly about it either or. It passed. And I guess the logical question, Julie, by the way, that's Julie Kay. What's next? What are you hearing?
So I'm glad you brought up the reaction from voters, because it was, I want to be clear, 52% of people voted for it, meaning that an upper 40s voted against it. So
Yeah, it's pretty split. Yeah.
almost half of Mecklenburg County,
Yeah.
at least the voters, the people who decided to go out on this kind of off-year election, are going to be pretty passionately upset about this. People were very passionate on either side. Today, though, we're finally getting to kind of peel the curtain back and say, okay, now what? We've talked about all these hypotheticals, but we actually now have to do it. The work for City Council in particular, I would say starts right now, but it's actually already been going on, assuming that this was going to pass. So it was actually very close for them. Imagine they've already started all this work, it almost didn't pass. And that's kind of what Malcolm Graham, City Councilman Malcolm Graham, talked about today. He sat down with reporters for about an hour and talked about all sorts of things going on, crime, taxes, but largely transit. And of course, just the overall outcome of the election, some interesting mix-ups in council that will be a part of this conversation going forward when we talk about transit. But basically the big thing right now is the current council has to decide on 7 seats of this 27-seat transit authority. That transit authority is going to decide which projects are prioritized from the funding that is generated from the sales tax. So it's a whole lot of moving pieces. It's not just like,
Yeah.
all right, this is happening. We do know, based on the state legislation, that 40% of it has to go to light rail, 40% has to go to roads, and 20% has to go to buses. But which projects amongst those
Right.
can be decided by this transit authority. So they're already, today and tomorrow, I believe, they're sifting through applications. I think there's just under 140 applications, so they've got their work cut out for them. And then interviews will be next week. There is a 3-person council panel that's been kind of leading this process, but I'm expecting all council members
Yeah.
to be in at least most of these, and all council members will be a part of that vote to decide who their 7 appointees are on November 24th. So this process is going to happen very, very fast for them. We've also got some seats from Mecklenburg County commissioners. A couple came from the General Assembly. And so there's lots of moving parts here, but the big thing now is, okay, we're going to have this money eventually. Who's now going to be in charge of making these huge decisions about how we spend it?
And folks who are going to be in the public eye when it comes to
Yeah.
this, because this is a decades-long project. This is not something that's going to, yes, it's passed, but it's not something that's going to happen next year, overnight.
And that's a big question too, because, well, the board has to be in place by January 1st. That is why we're kind of rushing and why they even started the process before it was passed. We didn't know. But the state legislation says it has to be in place by January 1st. They're not even going to start, you're not going to see your taxes go up, your sales tax go up in Mecklenburg County until, I think it's July, so
Yeah.
the summer. So they're going to be in place for 6 months deciding things before we even have this tax coming out of people's budgets. So a lot of moving parts here. We don't know what that's going to look like. Malcolm Graham said really the first 6 months to a year is going to be this foundational stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's still things we haven't even talked about, even little things like, what are the buses going to be called? Are we going to still go with CATS, or is it going to be like MPTA, Metropolitan Transit Authority? Like, are we going to change naming? Like, some things that I'm like, oh, I wouldn't think that's important, but like they have to make that decision probably now. So
Ooh.
I know. A lot of moving pieces. One of the biggest things, of course, people want to know about is the red line. Both the mayor this morning and Malcolm Graham addressed that at their separate press conferences. Kind of just, yes, that's a priority. We don't know when that will happen. We've already purchased the tracks, of course, but actually getting all that built is a years-long process. So that's going to be, I think, the biggest thing, of course, that we're following in the coming years.
And a few new council members on top of that. So it's not like we're talking about the same council that, where it started to pick up momentum and steam that's carried over. I mean, we're talking about, what, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 new council members.
District 5, District 3, District 6. I think that's it. And then, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Interesting, though, because District 6 flipped for the first time from red to blue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're actually going to have more Democrats, a different split than usual. We'll still have one Republican, Ed Driggs, in, I believe, District 7. But that changes things as well, just in terms of... And it will be interesting to watch, you know, how does council work with the MPTA? How closely entwined are they? That is one of the things that Malcolm Graham was like, we will see. That's kind of that foundational stuff we're working with over the next year. I think what's interesting, though, is on council at least, the people picking the transit authority, not all of them will be on council come January 1st, you know?
Yeah.
So they're going to make this decision by November 21st for 3 of them to no longer be on council. So that's interesting, too. And the mayor's seat gets 2 seats to choose, and she won her reelection, but if she didn't, she'd be picking 2 seats and then she'd be gone, you know? So that's part of it too, of like, we're making these decisions with a council that won't exist in that way in a month.
Interesting. It's I mean, it's just and there were other obviously interesting races, but again, this was the big talker. It passed. We had the map up of the decision. I think James brought it up. We have it right here on the screen.
Julie made a mention of not being able to talk to every voter in Mecklenburg County. Well, Julie, there's one precinct where it was tied. I'd be curious to talk to those people.
Do we know which one that was?
Yeah, let's see. If I mouse over it, I think it will tell us. It's like the Pineville area. I think I'm on it right now.
Wow.
587 votes, 50-50.
Wow.
That's
right
kind of
here
fun.
in South Mecklenburg County.
Rare that you see an actual 50-50.
That is
so
a 50-50.
Interesting.
Man, okay.
Well, thank you for that pitch for another day, James.
You're welcome. There's a
yeah.
finder's fee associated with it.
But yeah, it's a lot of interesting races. City council, mayor, all very important, but it almost all wraps into transit, as everything does right now.
What if you don't mind me asking, what race did you cover last night? I feel like you cover everything, so I have to ask you. It's hard to keep up with.
I actually just sat here and I talked the whole time. I'm not even kidding. Like I would just pop in and say stuff.
Okay.
But I did cover at our 11 p.m. newscast. I covered the sales tax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, Julie covers everything politics here, so I'm like, what did Julie cover? Okay, so she covered everything plus 1 cent sales tax. Got it. I'm sure we'll bring you in for something else coming up shortly, politics-wise, including this transit referendum.
Yeah.
That the ball is already in motion. So, Julie, thank you. Before we go, when can folks catch your story tonight?
4 and 5 both will focus on kind of the process for that, you know, picking those people. 5 will get into a little bit more of the red line.
Interesting stuff as always. Thank you, Julie. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We want to get right out to Miami, Florida, where right now President Donald Trump is speaking. He's actually speaking about the results from last night's election. Let's take a listen in.
No, it felt like I've been in this position for so long. And it's right. At that point, 1 year ago, I was actually campaigning. We did the McDonald's shot. Remember the McDonald's shot? We did the garbage truck shot. And actually, the McDonald's one was the biggest hit in the history of Google. Can you believe that? Number one, the garbage truck did well, but not as well. I guess there's something about McDonald's, right? But it worked, and we won a tremendous election. We won all 7 swing states. We won the great state of Florida, by the way, by 1.4 million votes, which is unprecedented. Biggest victory ever in Florida, including an 11-point victory right here in a place called Miami-Dade County. We won the popular vote for the first time of any Republican in many decades. We won the Electoral College 312 to 226. And we won 86% of the counties in America. That's a big one. 2,700 to 525. I'd say that's called a landslide, right? We got more votes from African Americans than any Republican candidate in history. We also won a record share of votes from the incredible Hispanic American community. There might be a couple of us. Biggest vote in history. And above all, we won a resounding mandate to make America great again, which is what we're doing. And every day since, I've been fighting to turn the promise made into the ultimate promise kept. We're going to do our job. We have a big job to do. We've done really well. I think it's the best 9 months, they say, of any president, and I really believe that if we can have a few more 9 months like this, you'd be very happy, you'd be very satisfied. But it's been pretty incredible, with trillions and trillions of dollars being poured back into our country by other countries and other places and people. 1 year ago, we were a dead country. Now we're a country that's considered the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's the hottest country. We are now in the hottest country anywhere in the world. And I'm pleased to report that today the United States has the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation anywhere. We have the greatest economy right now. A lot of people don't see that. But if you look at what's happening with all the factories, AI, auto plants all over the country being built, that if you would have thought about that 2 or 3 years ago, you would have said it was the opposite. They were all leaving. Now they're all coming in. They're all coming back, and then some. And I think that we can honestly say, and I think you're going to see it even more so over the next 12 months, that this is the golden age of America. This is the golden age. In the prior 4 years, crooked Joe Biden oversaw less than $1 trillion of new investment in the United States. So in 4 years, less than, think of it, less than $1 trillion. That was not doing too good. In 9 months, I've secured commitments of over $18 trillion, and we're going to have $21 trillion within the first year. So Sleepy Joe did, think of that. In 4 years, he did less than $1 trillion. We're going to have 21 trillion in 1 year. I would say it's slightly better. Slightly, just a little bit better. The stock market is set 40-time all-time record highs, and just recently, record high, record high, record high. All of them, all of the different exchanges. GDP growth in the second quarter was an amazing, almost 4%. And as you know, they said, oh, it'll be 2% or 1%. And it's been really helped a lot by the tariffs. It's been really helped incredibly, because this is really a transition period. We went from a horrible, failed country to a tremendous success. It's a transition, and yet we did almost 4%, triple and even quadruple almost every other country anywhere in the world. Think of that. In the third quarter, we're on track to achieve an estimated 4.2, maybe more. Who knows? I think if you go a couple of years out, you're going to see numbers like you've never seen, because all of these places that are now under construction, they're being built, they're going to be open, and thousands thousands of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs are coming in, even building them. But when they open, that's when you're really going to see the numbers. We're building some of the biggest buildings ever built anywhere in the world. The AI buildings, you know, they can cover, they show displays of them. They can cover the island of Manhattan. They're so big. They literally can cover the island of Manhattan. In 9 months, we've lifted over 600,000 Americans off of food stamps, which is a record. 1.9 million more American-born workers are employed today. Think of that. Almost 2 million American-born workers are employed today, more than when I took office. That's 9 months ago. Can you imagine that? And I tell Republicans, you want to win elections, you got to talk about these facts. You know, it's really easy to win elections when you talk about the facts. And we have more people working now than at any time in the history of our country. Right now, we have more people working. These are things you have to talk about. It doesn't just happen. You got to tell them. It's wonderful to do them, but if people don't talk about them, then you can do not so well in elections. Wages for workers are rising at the fastest pace in over 60 years. That's the workers, and that's what we love. We love the workers. Since I took office, wages for the typical factory worker are up $1,300. Construction workers' pay is up $2,200, and miners are up nearly $5,000 this year alone. And that's good because it's not, you know, such an extra cost to the company. It really isn't. Somebody who says, oh, it's going to cost more. The fact is that they're doing such business like they've never done. You're going to start seeing numbers coming out very soon that are going to blow your mind. Under Biden, we had the worst inflation in modern history. We had inflation that was so bad, costing the typical family about $33,000 over a period of time. Their policies sent food prices up 23. They come in, you know, when I first came in, I was in for 3 days, and one of the fake news members said, "Oh, back there, that's a lot of press. Fake news." They said, egg prices are through the roof. I was there for 3 days. And this maniac, this lunatic person, happened to be a woman. "Sir, what are you going to do about egg prices?" And they'd gone up like 4 or 5 times. I said, "Well, you just told me it has a problem." And people weren't buying Easter eggs. Do you believe it? I said, "We're buying Easter eggs for the White House, for the egg hunt, the famous egg hunt." But within a couple of months, we got them down. We have a great Department of Agriculture headed by Brooke Rollins, and we did a great job, and we got them down to the level they originally were a long time ago. Well, we have that in just about everything. And if we don't have it, we get them down. Their policies sent food prices soaring 23%, the Biden policies. And it wasn't him. It was the people surrounding him around the desk. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. Biden. How the hell did that happen? Well, I know how it happened. A rigged election, that's how it happened. Think of the damage done. Although I must tell you, but this is a much more powerful term. I mean, this is a much better term. In one way, it's bad to see how bad people... You're going to see the same thing in New York, by the way. You watch what happens in New York. Terrible. But you're going to see that same thing. And I hope it doesn't happen, but you're going to see it. Gas prices are surging to $5 a gallon, even higher, and mortgage rates skyrocketed by 152%. But under the Trump administration, all of that is changing. Prices are coming down very fast, and we're bringing them back to the beautiful part where you can have, and you can truly say, we're talking about the American dream again. You didn't used to hear that term. You heard it during my 4 years, and then it disappeared. Now you're hearing it again more than ever. Because we had the most successful economy in the history of our country during my first 4 years. We rebuilt the economy, cut the biggest tax cut in history. We had the biggest tax cut in history, the biggest regulation cut in history. That's why we had the great economy. And now, the only difference is we're doing better this time. Actually, we're going to have a bigger, better, stronger economy than the first 4 years. And that was the biggest, that was the most successful economy in history. Gasoline prices have plummeted to the lowest in 2 decades, and we're going to soon see $2 gasoline. Think of that, $2 a gallon. It was up to $4.50, $5. And you know, when you get gasoline and you get oil and gas down, it's so big, it's so massive, the importance of it, that everything else starts to follow, and that's what's happening. Grocery prices are way down, and Walmart just announced that the cost of their standard Thanksgiving meal, this is the greatest. They're greatest, they're wonderful. They come out every year with how much does a Thanksgiving meal cost compared to last year, right? And it always goes up, up, up. It's 40%, 30% more. Is 25% lower than 1 year ago. Isn't that correct? That's a big deal, Rima. That's a big deal. I don't know if they care about that in Saudi Arabia, but sure it means a lot. We got a princess here from Saudi Arabia. She's got a lot of cash. Serious cash, and she's a great person. So she doesn't care about the price of a turkey is down a little bit. You know, she doesn't have to worry. Since March, the price of eggs is down 85%. Energy prices are down, interest rates are down, despite the fact that we have a total nincompoop at the Federal Reserve. It was recommended by one of my real great people, who I never spoke to again. And the cost of the typical new mortgage is down by nearly $3,000 a year. Day by day, we're making America affordable again. It's going to be affordable again at a really record pace. And, you know, other people are going to take credit. All the mayors and all the governors are going to say what a great job. They didn't do a damn thing. Yet as we speak, the Democrats in Congress are trying to put all of this progress at risk and drag us back to the Biden policies of soaring prices, crushing energy costs, massive spending, open borders, let the world come into our country from prisons and from mental institutions, let them pour in, and rampant inflation. That's what Biden gave us, all of those things. With the reckless Democrat shutdown, virtually every Democrat in Congress has voted to hold the American people hostage in an effort to extort hundreds of billions of dollars in new spending. They're demanding free health care for illegal aliens that just came into our country from prisons and from mental institutions and drug dealers and drug addicts, and they want to give $1.5 trillion in giveaways that would turbocharge rapid inflation again as they did the first time. You remember that just a couple of years ago, 4 disastrous years we just had. They were the worst years. Meanwhile, the radical left Democrats are causing millions of Americans who depend on food stamps to go without benefits. They're forcing federal workers to go without paychecks, and they're stranding thousands of travelers at the airports. And you understand it, and they understand it. All because they want to return to the failed Biden policies.
All right, so that is President Trump speaking live in Miami. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Thank you for staying with us here on Live Impact News this afternoon as we navigate through another busy day. So we want to update you. At least 9 killed, others injured after a UPS plane crashes near the Louisville airport. A story that we covered here live on Live Impact News yesterday evening. Lee Waldman from CNN reports.
9 people are dead here after a fiery crash involving a UPS plane here at the Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport. 2 others in critical condition from burns. 16 families have reported their loved ones missing. We know that from the early images of this crash that an engine appears to have come apart from that plane. This is going to be a key piece of evidence for NTSB investigators.
Graphic video shows the moment the MD-11 transport aircraft operated by UPS erupted into flames as it slammed into an industrial area around the Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport, leaving multiple people dead.
Again, we expect that number will continue to rise.
Crews still pouring water on the scene Wednesday as first responders scour the charred wreckage for potential victims.
The search and rescue mission went through the night, has been able to intensify today, so hopefully it won't grow by much.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says despite the massive damage, it could have been much worse.
But let me tell you, this plane barely missed a restaurant bar. It was very close to a very large Ford plant with hundreds, if not 1,000+ workers.
A team from the NTSB set to arrive Wednesday to investigate the crash. Officials asking residents to report any debris as it could help provide clues to the cause of the crash. UPS has deep ties to Louisville. Worldport, the company's massive shipping hub at the airport, has halted operations. The company says more than 20,000 employees handle 300 flights per day and sort more than 400,000 packages per hour.
This is a tragedy for the victims that we've lost. It's a horrible event for everyone that's part of the UPS family and our entire city.
One of the fire chiefs working on that crash site off in the distance there says that the fuselage is completely burnt up. We've gotten a statement now from the manufacturer of those engines, GE Aviation. They said their sympathies are with the families and loved ones of those impacted. Safety is their first priority, and they're working alongside UPS and the NTSB. Live in Louisville, I'm Lee Waldman.
All right, thank you, Lee, for that report. All right, so we want to get now to coverage from our content partners over in Louisville, Kentucky. They are continuing to cover this plane crash, and right now they're playing back what Senator Mitch McConnell from Kentucky had to say regarding this plane crash. Let's take a listen in.
Today, Jefferson County schools and many local businesses are completely closed. Neighbors are mourning neighbors, so today will be a tough day in the Commonwealth. But the people of Louisville are grateful for the swift, life-saving efforts of our first responders from local police, fire, and EMS. They can trust in the prayers of their fellow Americans. And I want them to know that their representatives here in Washington are making sure that every federal resource they need is on the ground and headed their way soon. I spoke with Mayor Greenberg this morning, and my team and I will continue to stay in close contact with local, state, and federal officials, including at the FAA and the NTSB, in the coming days. But first and foremost, I'm keeping my fellow Kentuckians in my prayers and asking our colleagues to do the same.
And that is Senator Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor just moments ago addressing what had happened yesterday with this plane crash.
Yes, asking for prayers for the Louisville community, talking about UPS and how important it is to this community, how vital the company is in this community.
It's our world port.
It sure is.
We are headquartered.
And he talked about how packages going from one part of the world to the other will probably go through Worldport.
Right.
Just trying to explain to them the significance of what has happened here in his home city. And certainly also talking about the NTSB, saying he's staying in contact with the NTSB, as are Morgan McGarvey, Congressman Morgan McGarvey, and the Louisville mayor and the governor.
Yeah.
Brooke, I'm just coming in as you've been here all morning, all day, covering what's been unfolding as light came up and we could see more of the crash. It is a tragic situation, and as we continue to learn more, it just continues to be worse, it seems like, although the only good thing is the way that our emergency responders went in and took care of the people they could take care of.
We had over 200 firefighters and EMS responding. I mean, you remember the GE fire, right, years ago. That's the only thing in my recent memory that could even qualify to this kind of response. This might be bigger and surely more deadly. And we heard from Oklahoma's Fire Chief Mark Little, and he said the debris field is so massive. They have no idea who they're looking for, how many people. You know, they've got the 9 confirmed, but they have such big pieces of mangled up metal. They have to get their equipment in to remove that before they can see what's under it. So they're just having to go really inch by inch, a full city block that caught fire after this.
Right, it's unbelievable. I mean, just the looking at the level of destruction and the path that it took, it's really quite devastating when you look at the aftermath. And also, Chief Little did mention, though, folks who are worried about the firefighters, they did bring in a fresh crew, so some of those folks could get some rest who've been out there all night, and they are on those recovery missions, kind of going and looking for any more victims or information that they can.
And taking a look there, and that's the direct flight path. You see where it runs off the runway in the wider gray section there. That's how much further it went into, affecting a number of other businesses in that industrial district there, Grade A Auto Parts and Kentucky Petroleum Recycling. So as far as the victims, we don't know exactly where they're from. They haven't been identified. We've yet to have an official word on the victims from the plane, the 3 people aboard that plane. We don't know if they're local. Obviously, we are based here in Louisville, but they come near and far. But this is going...
Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertovan. That is continuous coverage there of that horrific plane crash there in Louisville yesterday evening. That's from our content partners there in Louisville. All right, so we want to get back now and talk about the impacts of the government shutdown, as we've been talking about throughout this afternoon, throughout the stream. Today marks the longest government shutdown, long stretch of the government shutdown in our nation's history, day 36. And we talk about so many impacts, from impacts when it comes to how folks are going to feed their families, to air travel we touched on earlier, but we want to talk about tourism. North Carolina has some great destinations, and tourism is impacted by this government shutdown. I want to bring in Dr. Lincoln Larson, Associate Professor in the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Management at NC State University. Dr. Larson, thank you for your time.
For sure. Happy to be here.
Let's talk about it. I mentioned tourism. How has this government shutdown affected you're talking about access to these major tourist destinations? I mean, I think about, Blue Ridge Parkway, Great Smoky Mountains, even our coastal area.
Yeah, there are more national park sites in North Carolina than almost any state east of the Mississippi River. So it's a huge part of our outdoor recreation and tourism industry. And when people can't access those sites and experience them the same way they're used to doing, it's going to have a significant impact on tourism and also tourism revenue in those gateway communities around the parks.
And one thing I think about too, and hopefully you can answer this, the longer the shutdown goes on, does that impact visitor behavior or demand in the long term? Eventually we won't be in a government shutdown, but
yeah, I mean, there are lots of issues associated with the shutdown. The first and foremost is the staffing concern, right? And parks, they're public resources. We try to keep them open as much as we can, but the reality is they require some degree of management. I mean, a lot of those parks, especially the Smoky Mountains, for example, runs like a small city. So when you don't have staff on the ground to take care of maintenance issues, to helpful dispose of human waste, to engage in law enforcement activities that would keep visitors safe and help them have a good experience, when those things are missing, the visitor experience starts to break down. And so the longer this goes on, the harder it is to sustain the types of trips that we're used to having when we visit places like national parks.
I also think about the recovery from Helene, Western North Carolina. We talked about the mountains, a great destination to go to. They are still picking up the pieces. I mean, more than a year later, that's still a heavy lift out there. Does this stunt any of the progress being made or any of the future work that's happening out there?
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of parks, this really couldn't have happened at a worse time. National parks have historically been underfunded and understaffed for decades, and they've faced a maintenance backlog coming into this. And when you add a shutdown and you take away employees and the revenue needed to continue managing these places, it's going to make it worse. And the efforts to rebuild after Helene, particularly in the western part of North Carolina, this is definitely going to slow that down, and it's going to have negative impacts on tourism in the Asheville area and around there too, as people aren't sure whether or not the places they want to visit are going to be open or not.
You mentioned this earlier. Can you dive deeper into the federal workers, the contractors' impact when it comes to the tourism sector here in North Carolina?
Yeah, well, there's a substantial workforce, both full-time and part-time, that works in these park settings. A lot of those workers are now furloughed, not getting paid, not able to engage in the stewardship behaviors they do on a regular basis. And so that impacts not just the parks themselves, but it impacts the lives of those people, right? And their families and everybody else impacted by that. And a lot of people don't realize, too, that because these parks are located in rural areas, tourism is one of the biggest economic drivers in those parts. And when you take that away, and when you take away the revenue generated from people who work in these small towns and work in the parks, that has a significant economic impact. And I think we're going to be feeling the effects of that for a long time, even after the shutdown ends.
Oh, wow. Is there something that we're not talking about when it comes to tourism? Something that we should be thinking about more when it comes to the impact of the shutdown on the tourism industry here in North Carolina?
Well, I think, any industry is going to benefit if it's adaptive and resilient, right? And so fortunately in North Carolina, while national parks and federal park resources are very important, even national seashores and some of those places you mentioned, we got a lot of other stuff that people can visit. We have a great state park system. We have amazing county, municipal parks, a lot of other outdoor recreation resources that North Carolinians can take advantage of. And so I think it's important to remember that, if the place you wanted to visit is closed, there's still other alternatives. And I think the tourism industry needs to be prepared for that and to help push people in different directions, maybe unconventional directions, to help them take advantage of substitutes that, maybe they didn't know existed before. And luckily, North Carolina, we got a lot of options on that front. So that's good.
One last question. You've been so generous with your time this afternoon. I want to ask from a classroom setting. A lot of those students that go to NC State, they're from North Carolina, so they understand some not. How do you, I guess a better question, what is the conversation surrounding tourism in this government shutdown overall in the classroom?
Well, I can tell you that students aren't happy about the situation when they're getting out, graduating, looking for jobs, and government isn't functioning, parks are closed, all that. So it's not a great situation for our students. What I'm trying to do and what I'm encouraging students to do is to really make a stronger case for parks and outdoor recreation as an essential resource. We saw this during the pandemic. Parks became a critical part of how we were outside, being healthy and happy. And I think instead of viewing parks as a luxury and something that we can just, close at any point and nobody cares, this is a critical part of our lives. And I think the extent to which we and politicians can realize that, we can start to prioritize resources in that way and make sure that whether or not there's a shutdown, our parks stay open and accessible to everybody who can benefit from them.
Some great context and great perspective there on a major industry here in our state. Dr. Lincoln Larson, Associate Professor in the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Management at NC State University. Thank you for your time here on Live Impact News.
Thanks. Get outside this weekend, everybody.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you. Again, a lot of impacts when it comes to the government shutdown. Day 36, we're continuing to track the fallout, the impact, and more importantly, how it impacts you and what you need to know as you navigate through this. All right. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Oh, James, what another beautiful day here in Charlotte.
I know, the professor said it himself. Get outside, enjoy the parks and the weather this weekend. I think this is Chris Mulcahy's pick of the week.
Oh, man. Because, you know, he likes to do the air horn. So, in honor of Chris Mulcahy.
It's like emojis, but with sound.
With sound. Beautiful day here. Let's check in with our full forecast with Majestic Storms. Take a listen to it.
Well, good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm. It's another gorgeous day today across the Carolinas, but today is even a little better because temperatures will be warmer. We'll be rising to nearly 75 degrees, the warmest day in my 7-day forecast. Now, it is going to be a little breezy at times, so if you have any plans outside, yeah, it'll be occasionally breezy with some of those winds gusting around 20-25 miles an hour. But if we get a view like this, as you can see in Dallas, I think we can handle a little bit of wind. Now, as we're heading towards the rest of our work week, we'll stay very mild. Even this weekend, no big problem. Small chance for a stray shower or two on Sunday. And then next week, we have some big changes ahead. It is going to get real cold, feeling a little like winter time because we have an Arctic blast of cold air heading our way. We'll get to that, but really throughout this morning and early this afternoon, it's been very quiet on our satellite and radar, meaning we all get to enjoy a nice, comfortable day. Yesterday was nice as well. We topped off around 69 degrees, around 70, didn't quite make it to 70. And today, not only will we make it to 70, but even a little bit warmer. We're turning up the heat, but it's because it's going to be a little breezy, especially this afternoon. Those winds, they're going to be moving into the southwest. So because of the direction of the wind, those temperatures will increase. Even after dinner time or so, still pretty comfortable into the 60s. Now, the sky will remain clear throughout the day today and overnight, so the next few days will be absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful day there in Blowing Rock with a high of 66 degrees, 74 in Morganton, 73 out there in Lenoir. Across Charlotte, we'll be nearing 75 degrees for us, Gastonia, even there in Lincolnton, and then 73 there in Monroe and Lancaster. So overall, a good day to spend some time outside. Now, if you're thinking, all right, you want to get outside, rake your leaves, might not be the best day to do that because of the wind. You can see those winds continue to be pretty steady throughout the afternoon. Again, moving from the southwest, the strongest winds gusting around 30 miles an hour up in the mountain locations. They'll start to die down overnight. And again, skies will remain clear while we're asleep, which means tomorrow morning sunrise will be early, but at least it's going to be a beautiful one. We'll be waking up to temperatures right around those mid to upper 40s. Now, the next 3 days, no complaints. Upper 60s, low to mid 70s. Now, that is going to feel nice. And really this weekend, not too bad either. Only a 20% chance for a stray shower on Sunday, but we're watching two different cold fronts. The first one is a pretty weak cold front going to bring some moisture into our area. However, the second one, this is going to be the one that brings in that blast of cold air. Not only that, but it could have just a little bit of moisture with it, and if it does, we could see a little snow up towards the mountain locations. Now, really the most impressive part of the secondary cold front is that cold air back behind it. But because that high pressure that'll be building behind it, at least it is going to be sunny. I mean, look at how big of a difference that is. 72 degrees on Sunday with a high of only 48 on Monday. And those high temperatures are struggling to warm, but look at those overnight lows. Those kids are going to be cold waiting at the school bus stop. So make sure they're definitely prepared for the cold elements. And if you have any outdoor pets, make sure they are as well. It's going to be cold here in the city, but look at the mountains with air temperatures dropping down into the teens next week. So bottom line is that it is going to change a lot, especially once you add that wind on top of it. That's when the wind chills could even dip down into the teens and possibly some single digits. There's our Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. So bottom line is get outside, soak up the sunshine, those nice mild afternoon highs into the 70s, because next week it is going to start out quite chilly. Have a great day.
All right, so that is your full forecast. We want to get now to an update. There was a press conference earlier with Craig Greenberg, the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, also officials there in Louisville. After at least 9 people died and several other people still injured after a UPS cargo plane crashed near Louisville's International Airport yesterday evening. So let's take you now, in case you missed it, to that update.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Mann. I'm the CEO of the Louisville Regional Airport Authority. Thanks for being here today. First, I'd like to really start just by saying, our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with all the families, friends, and everybody that's been affected by this tragedy. All the first responders that have been out spending a lot of hours last night, still going this morning. Really instrumental in us being able to open the airport. Special kudos to the traffic control and our folks at TSA who were here and available and getting this place ready to go. We are operational. We have one runway open. We do have some delays. We had 21 flights cancel yesterday. That's 16% of the total flights. And then as of today, we've had 16 flights cancel, 12% of our total flights. We expect there'll probably be many delays and a few more cancellations until we get another runway open. But we are operational. TSA is screening passengers and the tower is clearing aircraft, and so we are moving along in that fashion. The last part I'd like to say is the NTSB has arrived. They're on the scene. I expect you will hear from them later today. We don't have an exact time, but they are out on the airfield, and I believe they will be in sometime this afternoon, and you'll hear more information on that. That's all I have for right now, Mayor.
Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to speak directly to the families who are still waiting for information about their loved ones. I know there are simply no words that can undo what happened, that can provide true comfort at this moment with lack of information and pain that you're feeling. But please know that everyone in Louisville, myself, all levels of government across the state, the federal level, we are all here for you. We are here to support you, to provide you with the resources that you need. People are working right now to get you the information you're seeking as quick as we possibly can, and we will continue to stay with you. This is not something that will go away overnight. We know that your pain will continue for days, months, years ahead, and so we are here to support each and every one of you. I was there last night at the Family Reunification Center to try to provide some comfort to families who are looking for information, and we are continuing to work every day. Also, to the rest of our city, no one should have to deal with tragedy alone. Whether you're the family member of someone who is still missing or have been notified as a victim of this crash, whether you're part of the UPS family, whether you know people who are part of the UPS family, everyone in our city, I know, has been hurt by this tragedy. And so we have resources available directly for the victims and for others throughout the city to help. And that's where I wanted to start today. First, if you're still looking for information about a loved one, please go to 2911 Taylor Boulevard. That's the LMPD training facility. That is where we have members of the LMPD Victims Unit, where the Red Cross, 7 counties, and other resources are available for families of individuals who may have been victims of the crash. Beyond just the families, again, know this is an incredibly difficult time and trauma impacts everybody differently. There are resources available throughout the entire city to provide help to individuals who are struggling to process this tragedy. If you feel like you have an emergency, a mental health emergency, please dial 988. 988 is a national number that can get you a mental health professional and some assistance to deal with your grieving, with your pain, with whatever you are dealing with. If you have a non-emergency but you would like to still speak with a mental health counselor, please reach out to our Office of Violence Prevention that has trained mental health professionals waiting to assist you. That phone number is 574-6949. Additional beyond those resources, JCPS is out today. We know that there are families across our city that are struggling with hunger, with lack of food right now as a result of SNAP benefits being cut off, other issues in this challenging time. If you are in need of food today, if your kids are in need of food today because they are not in school, please reach out to Dare to Care at 966-3821. 966-3821. And also, as the governor just announced, we're not going to go over everything that the governor just provided in his briefing that he just made from Frankfurt. He is now headed towards Louisville to join Congressman McGarvey and me here shortly. We will not repeat everything, but I do want folks to know that we are working with Governor Beshear and his team on the relief fund for families of victims of this. We've had an outpouring of support already from local companies, local foundations, and individuals to ask what they can do to help. And so we're going to all partner on this together to support them. That's the Team Kentucky, Team KY Emergency Relief Fund.ky.gov. There's going to be more information put online about that if you're interested in supporting the families of the victims. A few other items on public safety. As we mentioned this morning, the shelter-in-place radius has been reduced to 1/4 mile, and we will continue to reduce that as soon as we're confident that it is safe. Can continue to try to shrink that throughout the day. Air monitoring continues to go on around the crash site and around the city. And all residential water service is safe to drink. Everyone's water is safe to drink unless you have been specifically reached out to by the Louisville Water Company giving you an advisory. You should feel comfortable that your water is safe to drink. LG&E is getting power back on to those non-affected areas outside of the crash site. Right now, last I heard, there were 135 customers still without power. Also want to talk about drones for a minute. Right now, there's a temporary flight restriction that's been put in place by the FAA surrounding the crash site. From private individuals or other organizations to be flying right now. They could get in the way of our recovery operations. If you are flying a drone within this TFR area, we will find your drone and you run the risk of prosecution, of heavy federal fines. Please do not be that person that is getting in the way of our recovery efforts. Give our first responders, give the NTSB, give everyone the opportunity to deal with that site, and please don't use drones right now in that restricted airspace. Congressman McGarvey and I have been in touch since the first moments after this happened. I also want to thank Robin Taylor from Senator McConnell's office here. We've been in touch with Senator Paul's office, with Congressman Guthrie's office. In times like this, everybody puts partisan politics aside here in Kentucky, and we're all working closely together. Governor Beshear and his administration, my administration, and all of our federal delegation working together to bring whatever resources each of we can in partnership to get answers, to provide relief and resources, and to ensure that our city is safe and coming together to support those who are in need.
All right, so that is Mayor Craig Greenberg out of Louisville, Kentucky, giving an update earlier on the horrific plane crash there, the UPS plane that crashed down near Louisville International Airport on yesterday evening. All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC+. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So we want to continue our reporting, our conversation regarding the government shutdown. So as the nation continues through the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, food pantries across South Carolina say they're feeling an impact. WCNC Charlotte's Anna King is showing us how a new donation from Duke Energy is bringing some relief. Anna, tell us about it.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, food pantries across, honestly, the country are feeling this impact. Last week, I was in North Carolina at Champion House of Care, and they told me that they are strained. They're seeing a huge influx of people coming in needing help. And I'm hearing the same thing here in Chester County at the Fort Lawn Community Center. They told me they are seeing a record number of people come in for help just because of the SNAP benefits that were cut. People are coming in looking for help, looking for some relief. But like you said, they are anticipating here in South Carolina that $100,000 relief fund from Duke Energy that was donated to 1SC. 1SC is the fund that Governor McMaster activated to help food banks that will then help food pantries. So it's a trickle-down effect that will help food pantries across South Carolina. But they did tell me that this is a slow process. They told me it will take around 3 weeks before they even see the impacts of that donation or 1SC. Anyway, just because it takes that amount of time to use that funding to then purchase the food and then distribute it to the pantry. So it is a long process, and right now they are telling me that they're strained and they can use any help they can get right now.
Of a story that a lot of food pantries are going through right now, feeling that strain. Anna, thank you for your time. You can catch Anna at 4 o'clock on WCNC Plus and WCNC Charlotte. Thank you again, Anna. All right, so we want to go now to Raleigh, or Greensboro.
Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem. Okay, I see.
First try.
Okay, I see a couple of addresses on here. Thank you. I saw Greensboro. Winston-Salem. This is a roundtable discussion on the state's innovative medical debt relief program. Last month, Governor Stein announced that more than $6.5 billion in medical debt has been erased for more than 2.5 million North Carolinians. Let's take a listen into what Governor Josh Stein is saying.
They're willing to allow people's health, people's well-being, people's lives to be a bargaining chip in matters that have nothing to do with this. It's really immensely upsetting. With that, on that happy note, I will turn it over to Deputy Secretary Jonathan Kaplan for some preliminary words before we have a discussion.
Thank you so much, Governor. Thank you for your leadership and your engagement on this important initiative. And I want to thank Pastor Witt again for hosting us today, and everybody that's here telling their stories and contributing to this important conversation. This is a big deal. $6.5 billion of medical debt relief, far more than we had anticipated, and we're not done yet. We're not done yet. There's more to come, more good work to happen. 2.5 million North Carolinians, hundreds of thousands of letters are going out right now to North Carolinians across the state, and we're fortunate to be able to hear a couple of stories today. This is a really good news story and what has been challenging at times this year. And I think it's time for us to really focus on it and celebrate this. I also want to reflect back on being someone who is a part of this journey of getting this program up and off the ground. Can you believe that we're here, that people are actually benefiting from this program? Something that was initiated last year is helping people's lives right now. Helping millions of North Carolinians. There is very little that we can do in that timeline that impacts that many lives. And it's really, really thrilling to be able to meet some folks who are benefiting from this program. And I just want to underscore the kind of unique nature of North Carolina's initiative of not only looking backwards to help clean up medical debt for individuals who have no way to pay to help themselves when they have a heart attack or they have a car accident, something that they didn't choose to happen to them and could not pay, and were carrying that debt for, in some cases, over a decade. And not only cleaning that up for individuals, but also moving forward and helping to mitigate that accumulation of debt going forward, and doing it in a way that doesn't rely on state dollars. So I'm just really proud of the work that we've accomplished here in North Carolina. There's really a lot of more good work to do, and it really helps to have folks engaging with us and telling your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. So this was a partnership mainly between the state and the hospital, but we were required to have a nonprofit partner to really make this happen, and that was Undo Medical Debt. And we're here with Eva Marie Stahl. Tell me what you've seen across the country as relates to this issue, and how does North Carolina's approach compare to what's going on around the country?
Sure. First, let me just say I'm thrilled to be here. This is an exciting moment as we've worked really hard to sort of bring this to life in North Carolina, which is a unique project. I'll step back and just say a quick word about what Undo does. So we purchase medical debt in bulk in large portfolios for pennies on the dollar, and we leverage philanthropic funds to do that. And then once we obtain that debt, we have two criteria. So we help people who earn below 400% of the federal poverty level, or if their bills are more than 5% of their income. So once we determine that, we push out letters to all those individuals to let them know they're free and clear of those debts. There's no tax burden to them because it is a gift from a disinterested party. And so through that cycle, we're able to hear back from constituents. So people come back to us through their letters, which include a QR code to tell their story. And that's really important because it allows us to build the narrative and share with the world what the experience of medical debt is really about. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the polling that we've done through our research arm, which really highlights what you said, Governor, which is that the mental harm and stress of medical debt is overwhelmingly the #1 concern for individuals. And second to that is not going back to their provider, right? And we can see what that actually will mean for people in terms of their health and wellness, as well as their financial security. So across the nation, I would say this issue has really grown leaps and bounds for our organization. We've grown in our work. We're now I think we've abolished almost $28 billion worth of medical debt nationwide for almost 15 million people. And in parallel, we've seen a sort of surging of policy action, right, across states. And they range from, stopping putting medical debt on credit reports, to limiting interest rates that you can charge people for medical debt, to improving and making financial assistance or charity care more robust and accessible for people. So I think what's exciting about that is that North Carolina entered at a unique moment, and it took all of it. Right? And so that's what really differentiates it, is that one, they were able to engage and have all the hospitals in the state participate. All of these 99 hospitals are actually donating their medical debt. So that makes it feasible for a charitable organization to come in and administer the debt relief. And then second, what you did is think upstream. So you had sort of a portfolio of policy options from across the country that people were testing, and you could take this one and that one and this one. And so it created sort of an arc of policy work upstream of interventions, right, that could mitigate the harms of medical debt, so that once people had their medical debt relieved back to 2014, then they know moving forward that there are more robust and better options for them than carrying those debts moving forward, and better protection. So I think that it creates all of these and supports all of these protective factors that we want for individuals, so that they return to care, so that they see their doctor and they get the care that they need. So it's really exciting to be a part of a project that is so forward-looking. But I think, too, as I mentioned before, we just actually released polling last week because we do some research work. And I would say overwhelmingly across the political spectrum, people want states to act. So that's also a place where I think North Carolina is ahead of the game. So we heard that from voters that 76% of them, regardless of party, want their states to act on the issue of healthcare affordability because medical debt is such a burden for them. So there's such intense support for this issue. There's bipartisan support. It doesn't matter, what team you're on, right? That everybody wants this relief and everybody wants action from the states. So North Carolina should be commended for that.
Thank you for that national context. That's great. Now, before we go to the doctors, why don't we talk to two folks who lived this issue. So we'll start with Jordan. Tell us whatever you want to tell us about the health situation, but tell us what it was like to carry that debt and the experience of having it relieved.
Luckily, mine was kind of short-lived. Like I found out very quickly, which was a huge relief because when I got it, I'm not an emotional person, and I cried. I was like, I was already paying on another procedure that I had done the previous year, and so I got this, and it was bad timing. Because the kids were starting school, their fall sports, all of their things together. Our health insurance, working for the state, is going up, doubling. So everything all at one time was just together, and so I just started kind of researching. Is there any way? And then I found out that there was a chance. And when I got the letter last month, I was so relieved. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I told the kids they can go back into their sports and everything starting in January the next semester because I had to cut them down a little bit this semester and stuff just to kind of keep them, financially able to do so.
How long had you been carrying the debt, or had it been put on your back?
Well, I was paying off one that was from April 2024, and that was also relieved, which I didn't even think that was a thing, like a possibility. And so both the surgery from this summer and that were erased. And I mean, it's amazing.
That's wonderful. How about you, Dennis?
So as a recipient of the relief, for me, my experience was a little bit different because of the way that I had prioritized things in my household. The medical debt was something that factored in toward the back end. The day-to-day survival, food, transportation, providing for the needs of the children in the household. Many of the things that you named were so front-facing that the medical debt and a path toward thriving, because the way medical debt impacts your credit, was really on the back burner, and survival was what was up front. And so what having my medical debt relieved did for me was remind me that thriving is possible. And so, to be succinct, that's kind of what it does, to have your medical debt relieved. It reminds you that thriving is possible.
How long had you been with that debt?
So I had debt all the way back to 2014, which is the furthest extent that the program allows provision for. And so each year, beginning of the year, people kind of set their priorities and figure out what they're going to tackle and how they're going to make a little bit of progress. And every year, you get to February, March, and it's like, oh,
I'm not going to be able to get to that this year.
You're right. You see your priorities getting rearranged.
All right, so that is a roundtable happening right now in Greensboro where Governor Josh Stein, along with others, are talking about medical debt relief. Again, that is happening. You can continue to watch that on our secondary stream right now here on WCNC Plus. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Up next, third event, we want to get back now to Greensboro, where Governor Josh Stein is holding a roundtable talking about medical debt relief. Let's take a listen in.
Look out for this medical debt relief. Identify that the debt has been relieved for them so people don't fall through the cracks, because we know that many of our government programs, unfortunately, as robust or as thorough as they attempt to be, still have people who are in need and whose needs go unmet. And so raising awareness gives people the opportunity to not slip through the cracks and also help us work together on a community-based level and on an organizational level to create networks and safety nets that don't allow predatory practices to continue.
Good, thank you. Let's talk to the two doctors and tell us what your insight into this issue has been, whether, we'll start with that issue and then I'll ask my follow-up question.
Okay. Well, we were talking about this behind closed doors, but we actually, as physicians, can see when patients have bad debt. My focus usually when I meet a person is to talk about what their problem is. I don't usually pay attention to their insurance or their zip code, look at their medical history and issues that bring them in. But when a patient has the medical debt, our electronic medical record makes it impossible to miss. There are these bold letters on the screen on the right, on the left, that say bad debt. It's kind of like a modern scarlet letter. It's really hard to ignore, and these letters color every decision that we make during the visit, what medications we prescribe, which over-the-counter regimens we recommend, and even lifestyle changes that we encourage. I know my patients don't want to add to their debt, so that awareness changes my recommendations and what I ask them to do. Sometimes it means spending extra minutes searching for the most affordable medication options instead of talking about the most effective options. I want to do something that they're actually going to do rather than the thing that might be, the best via evidence-based medicine. So in my practice, I see patients with food allergies, and for them, avoiding foods isn't a preference, it's really a matter of survival. But specialty diets come with a much higher grocery bills, so this adds another layer of financial strain for our already strained patients. For families already living paycheck to paycheck, every substitution, every label check can deepen that burden of debt.
Thank you. Dr. Banks?
Yeah, so from a primary care perspective, medical debt's not just a financial issue, it's a health determinant. It limits access, adherence, and trust, ultimately undermining both prevention and management of chronic diseases. Patients will delay or avoid care for cost concerns. This causes chronic diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetes, congestive heart failure to become worse and require additional measures to control. This reactive care, it leads to poorer outcomes and overall higher costs. Medical debt can also lead to medication non-adherence, gaps in treatment due to delay in specialty care, and psychological impacts, as you guys mentioned. Patients will wait to fill prescriptions. They'll often avoid follow-up with specialists over concerns for higher copays. This increased stress and anxiety can lead to decreased self-esteem and thereby negatively impacting behavioral health or mental health and the chronic medical condition that they have.
Is this something that any of your patients have talked to you about when they're in the room with you?
Yeah, we were kind of talking about it before. I might have a patient come in and then they disappear, and it can be years before I see them again. And when I see them, they often mention that maybe I lost my insurance, I'm dealing with homelessness, or just every day is a struggle. And so I have to decide, am I going to take the medicine as you prescribe or take some of it, skip a few days just to kind of stretch it out and make it work. For the food allergies as well as chronic conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, I can tell you all the things that you need to do as far as like controlling your diet, changing your diet. But if you don't have access to those healthier food options, you're going to the fast food, you're going to whatever's $5 because that seems like I can still eat. It sounds affordable, but ultimately it's causing more problems because it's raising your blood pressure with all the salt. So it's a constant battle, and people do mention it.
Have your patients brought it up affirmatively and talked about it?
100%. Medications are the big thing. These inhalers are stupid expensive that people need to live and thrive. And, you know, they'll skip a dose here or there, and they think that they're doing okay, and they'll keep skipping doses, and like she said, it just sneaks up on you, and then you end up with an asthma exacerbation. You end up missing out on things that you enjoy doing. We want our patients to live their lives fully, to do the hiking that they like, to hang out with friends, to do the physical activity that they enjoy doing, but they eventually just slowly stop doing these things, and they kind of, you know, reach their new normal because they're not using their medications because of these price points.
I was going to say the inevitable. Things go bad after 5 p.m. and on the weekends.
Yeah.
And so that means now you're finding yourself at urgent care or an emergency department, and that in itself is a higher bill regardless. So a lot of times they think, oh, I can just wait it out, and then it gets to that point where they can't wait anymore.
So, Jordan and Dennis, when yours was about a decade and yours was a year and a half, were there times when you felt like you wanted to go to the doctor, but you're like, I just can't take on more debt? Or were the consequences to your physical health? Was it to your mental health? And were there financial consequences you could point to as a result?
Well, they discovered, mine was a cyst, and they discovered it back October a year ago, and they've been tracking it, and they told me multiple times that surgery was probably the best answer, but I was like, I'm not paying for that, we'll just hope that it goes away. And by the time that they got to it this summer, they ended up actually having to remove the organs that was in because they didn't know how bad it had gotten.
So that was an actual instance where the financial consequences resulted in delay, and delay resulted in a worse health outcome.
And even when I got the bill, I almost called to cancel it because I was like, I can't do this. And then I was like, I guess I'll have to figure it out. And I'm so glad I did because I felt so much better afterwards. I didn't realize how bad it had made me feel.
So my friends and I used to joke about how expensive it is to call the ambulance. That used to be a joke. And then I tore my ACL and had to figure out whether I was going to drive myself to the hospital or try to navigate pressing the gas and brake. I'm not going to tell y'all what I did, but the fact that I had to make that choice and have to consider that is, I guess, what we're having a conversation about.
Again, health.
Yeah, and medical debt, what I think you're seeing here is that medical debt in and of itself traps people in a cycle of poor health and poor financial health that has ramifications well beyond just themselves as an individual. It impacts your family, it impacts your ability, as you said, to thrive. And it really is kind of a disease on the healthcare system, and it's one, unfortunately, that kind of centers the patient and provider relationship around collections and what the financial obligations are as opposed to the actual care that you're delivering. And you need to be focused on the care for the individuals, not trying to factor in how they're going to be able to afford these things.
Right. And the two of you clearly are going to always try to put the patient first, but if you're a provider and you need income in order to stay in business, it may subconsciously affect the way you interact or how long you interact with the patient. If you see this glaring scarlet A, as you characterized it. So it's nice to know that the vast majority of North Carolinians are now going to be able to go to their doctors and not have that flashing scarlet A. A lot of what you all are talking about in terms of the consequences have to do with healthcare affordability. And this is very important for the two reasons. One is that it takes backward-looking weight off your shoulder. It improves the charity care policies at our 99 acute care hospitals, for which we are grateful. But it certainly doesn't solve the healthcare affordability issue. And what we're seeing in Washington right now with the Affordable Care Act subsidies and the fact that the Republican Congress and the president refused to engage on that issue, leading to the government being shut down. Folks, I don't know if any of you got notices of what your new health care rates were going to be under the ACA, but rates were doubling. And there are going to be plenty of people who just say to themselves, I cannot afford that with all of the other immediate needs that you have. rent, shelter, food for your kids, whatever it is, that there are going to be a lot of people who give up health insurance, and then they're probably not going to go see either of you. They're just going to wait till they get really sick and do what you said, Dr. Banks, go to the emergency room or the urgent care center, and then hope for the best. And it's just not the way a healthcare system should work. It's the most expensive way to provide care for people.
Well said. Double tap on that.
Well, how about we go around for some final comments? Feel free to, and if you want to ask questions of each other, feel free to do that as well. Eva, have you heard anything today that triggered thoughts or reactions?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things. I mean, one, as you pointed out, I think we're in a fragile moment. I think that affordability is a top of mind for everyone. People, 2/3 of people are struggling to make ends meet and, doing trade-offs within their household, right, to make things work. So when health insurance prices go up for them, it means that they're also making an imperfect choice. And I think it also just got a lot more confusing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we also know what voters don't want, which is higher deductibles and more cost sharing. And so that's not a solution they're particularly interested in. But that seems to be the direction that we're going. And I think that what I've heard today too is sort of, it affirms that, right? That when you get those bills and you look at those out-of-pocket costs, whether it's a deductible or your portion of the bill, that it's just too overwhelming and it's unaffordable. So it just, I think that it's unsustainable, but I also think that when states are taking action like you've done in North Carolina, that it is hopeful and it leads the way in being innovative and thinking about what can we do now, what can we do in this moment, and we can relieve debt and we can give people relief, and we can help them find a path to the support that they need to get the care that they need, and we can crack open an important conversation about the cost of doing business, so that we can make sure more North Carolinians have access to the care that they need.
And to build on that point, I think what we've seen through our experience thus far with our medical debt relief initiative is that some institutions have gone beyond the requirements that we set out and that they agreed to. Is that while they were going through the process and cleaning up these books, donating the debt to undo medical debt, they went beyond just the hospital setting. If they owned physician practices, some of them went into their physician practices and cleaned up the books there, and some of them went into other facilities that they may own, because they realized this bad debt's not really doing anything for us.
All right, folks, Vanessa Rufus here in the Live Impact News studio, taking over for Nick Sturdivant. We're going to pivot away from this and talk about the ongoing government shutdown. No doubt you've heard this is now the longest shutdown in U.S. history at 36 days. And we are watching to see if there's going to be any sort of movement in the direction of getting the government open again. We've got Mitch Kokai joining us with the John Locke Foundation, giving us some more insights today about the impacts of this shutdown. Where could we potentially go from here? Mitch, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mitch, obviously the big headline today, this is now the longest shutdown in U.S. history. We see so many different impacts from this, local, state, national level. And there are apparently some talks at this point, at this hour, to end the shutdown. Where do you think we go from here at this point?
Well, at some point the shutdown is going to end because someone will decide that it's not worth the pain that's being inflicted on those who do see the tangible direct impacts. You mentioned that it's now the longest shutdown. The previous longest shutdown was one that took place the first time Donald Trump was president. It was 35 days back in the 2018-2019 timeframe. To give people a little bit of perspective, government shutdowns weren't a thing. It wasn't something that happened in the government before 1980. That was the first time that it was determined that if there wasn't a funding agreement in place, that the government had to shut down. And since that time, which in the long history of the U.S. is still a relatively recent phenomenon in the last 45 years, we've had 11 different shutdowns that have had an impact on leading to furloughs of government workers. So it's not as if it's something that never happens, but it's also not something that happens all the time. It's still a rarity. You have this one that's now the longest. You had one that lasted 35 days during the first Trump administration. And then the next longest one before that was a 21-day shutdown in 1995-96 during the Clinton years. So we have seen that this shutdown as a more normal part of life is only something that's happened since the first election of Donald Trump. And so I don't think anyone wants to really get used to this being a way of life, but it certainly has become much more common over the last decade than it was over the first 3.5 decades in which we saw shutdowns for the first time.
Well, and I think about, if there were to be some sort of agreement on the basis which we've seen the negotiations thus far, which is the House passed, potentially, the House passed resolution. I mean, that's still a temporary funding situation, if you will. And so I just wonder, any sort of agreement that might be, come to in the near future, hopefully, would that potentially also be just a short-term funding plan, just on the basis of where the two parties stand and how kind of far apart they are at this point, and then we just do this again in several weeks?
That's entirely possible. And one of the reasons that happens is because for a number of years now, Congress, whether it's been led by the Democrats or the Republicans, has really failed to do one of its basic jobs, and that is come up with a comprehensive budget plan that deals with budget issues and that goes beyond that and sort of takes account of the fact that we are spending ourselves into multi-trillions of dollars of debt. And so what you end up getting is these short-term arrangements, sometimes just a matter of weeks, sometimes a matter of months. If we're lucky, it'll be in the neighborhood of a year. But these kind of short-term deals that then get extended from time to time. And at some stages, and they're the stages when you get to the shutdown, the various parties who are involved just decide, well, we're not going to reach an agreement now, and we're going to test the other side to see if they'll come over to our way of thinking. I think one of the things that we're seeing this time that's a little bit different than what we've seen in some past shutdowns is that even though there's certainly a ton of people out there who are feeling direct impacts of this and others who are feeling indirect impacts if they work with government agencies and can't either get a contract or get a meeting with someone from the government or get a permit because the government is shut down. There's a lot of folks who are being impacted, but among those who are not directly impacted, there seems to be less of an urgency to resolve this. I remember covering, when I was back in my news working days back in the 90s, how much of a big deal it was that the government shut down in 1995 and concern about what sort of long-term impact is this going to have? Who's it going to hurt politically? Is it going to lead to long-term economic consequences? This time around, though, even though we've now reached the longest shutdown in federal government history, I think we're seeing less of that. It's become not the norm, but acceptable enough that people are saying, oh, well, it's just the government's doing what it's going to do. And I think that leads into your question that if they come up with a short-term deal, does this make them any less likely to rely on this same sort of tactic again in the future? My guess is once this gets resolved, no one's going to want to see a shutdown again anytime soon. But if both parties at the end of the shutdown say, well, it didn't really turn out too bad for us, then that possibility is out there again the next time some sort of funding agreement is on the table and one side or both want to play chicken with the other one.
Well, on that note of, you mentioned the parties kind of thinking about, well, how much is this going to impact us as far as public perception? I mean, obviously we're coming off here now on this day. Last night was election night, seemingly a pretty successful evening for Democrats. Is there any sort of tie-in, do you think, with the shutdown with what we saw? I know there are other larger political, storylines happening at this point that are playing into that. But what role do you think the shutdown has at all, if any, with what we saw last night on election night?
Potentially there was an impact there. I'm guessing that for at least some voters, it was that way. Of course, we are dealing now in the federal government with the Republicans controlling the White House, controlling the U.S. House, controlling the U.S. Senate. It is certainly true that if you just left it to the Republicans, they would have had a deal. But in the Senate, it's not possible for Republicans to get things done by themselves because of the filibuster. There is a need to get at least some Democratic support. The problem for the Republicans is you have to rely on people knowing civics and understanding how things work in the Senate and the filibuster to make that argument. And but enough people don't care about that. They're just saying, you're the ones in charge. You're the ones who are leading to us having a shutdown. You need to do something about it. And I'm guessing there are at least some folks who were voting in the elections this week who had that on their mind and saying, well, Republicans are in charge of D.C. and they can't even keep the government open. Let's go the other way. You shouldn't go too far with that because a lot of the states where we saw big election results are in the deep blue states. I mean, what we saw in California, what you saw in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, places like that, they're blue states. They're going to be voting for Democrats anyway. But I think there is a lesson to be learned from anyone who's involved in a government shutdown is that this is not something that's popular. And if it's top of mind with people that you're keeping the government shut down, that certainly is not going to be a benefit for you. It might not be a huge disadvantage. And I'm guessing that as long as this is resolved relatively shortly, that by the time voters go to the polls in November of 2026, this will be a distant memory by then. They'll be thinking about things that are more upfront at that point. But still, it is something to keep in mind. People don't like these shutdowns. They basically see it as government not doing its job. And that could have an impact when voters head to the polls, because remember, for politicians, voters are the bosses.
Now, since you brought up the filibuster, I feel like we could dive into that just a little bit more. We know that the president kind of reiterated his desire to see the filibuster being eliminated of this morning. Senate Majority Leader John Thune ruled that out. And I guess, for folks who are watching this right now here, what could you say as far as the argument for and against? What would be the fallout, if you will, of eliminating the filibuster, and maybe kind of get into the weeds a bit more for folks who don't know all the nuances of that?
Well, sure. The filibuster, which has changed over the years, when it originally came about in the Senate, the idea was you would have to have a certain number of votes beyond a bare majority to block a filibuster. But at that time, when it originally started, it really was a hassle for the senators who wanted to create the filibuster. They would actually have to do a real filibuster, stand in the Senate and talk and talk and talk and talk until they were done talking, and then action could take place. Now the filibuster operates in such a way that you really don't have to do anything difficult to do it. It's procedurally just a way to block things from happening, and so it makes it easier for the minority party to employ it. But in terms of the arguments for and against, obviously the majority party would benefit with no filibuster, because then they could get legislation passed more quickly. And that's one of the reasons why the president is so interested in getting rid of the filibuster, because then he thinks that the House and the Senate, controlled by Republicans, could pass legislation that he would like, then he could sign it and things could move forward. The counter argument is that one of the reasons to have the filibuster is so that it isn't easy for one party just to railroad everything through the Congress and to the president's desk that they want, that there is a role to play for the minority party, and to have the minority party's interests represented in a final deal makes sense. It's something that's helping Democrats right now. It is something that has certainly helped Republicans in the past when Democrats have controlled the White House and both chambers. And there are certainly, even from a public policy perspective about whether this is good government or not, there are arguments to be made for and against it. The fact that we have two different chambers, the House and the Senate, provides its own sort of safeguard. So it wouldn't be entirely out of the realm of possibility to still have good legislation if you got rid of the filibuster. But I think in a situation like we're in right now, or in the opposite situation where it's the Democrats who control the White House and the House and the Senate, having that filibuster in place ensures that the other major party at least gets to have some sort of say in what's happening, just so you can't have one party's priorities governing everything that's happening while they're in charge.
So to go back to a point that you mentioned a couple questions back, you talked about the fact that the last record that stood for longest government shutdown was during the last Trump administration. And we know that, at least in part, the situation with air traffic controllers and staffing shortages at airports allegedly, we reportedly took a role in that shutdown coming to an end. It just became unsustainable the way that travel looked at that point. We are getting to the point where we are seeing more and more of these staffing shortages kind of pile up. There are comments from, for example, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy that we could have airspace closed, in some locations next week if the shutdown continues. I mean, how many more impacts can we expect to see in the coming days? Either on that front of travel, SNAP benefits. I mean, what comes next? If the shutdown does linger, what other consequences could everyday Americans start to experience as we go longer and longer into this?
Well, you mentioned one of the main ones that people would see if it's not possible to keep air traffic controllers in place, then you would see some impact on people's daily travels. The other thing that comes to mind is really any of the federal government agencies that affect people's lives on a day-to-day basis. If they have to start shutting things down because the money is not available, then you could start to see an impact on checks being mailed out. I mean, I don't know that there's any danger at this point of people not getting a Social Security check or that sort of thing. But at some point, if there's no incoming government funding, if there's no way for staffing to be in place, then government agencies will continue to have to start stopping services. They don't want to stop the services that have to go forward. And so the things that have shut down to this point are things that we can survive without. But the longer a shutdown goes, then the more likely you're going to see the things that affect people on a day-to-day basis. I think that's one of the reasons why it's interesting. I don't think anyone really would welcome this, but it's kind of been interesting to see what the reaction has been, because there's certainly some part of the voting populace that looks at a shutdown and says, well, yeah, just keep it shut down. And that's a not insignificant part of the president's voting base. And so back in the 90s, mentioning the shutdown then, there was a lot of concern about, who, not only who's this going to hurt, but how's it going to hurt politically? And are people really going to blame the Republicans or the Democrats for doing this? Who will pay a political price the next time they go to the polls? This time around, because there is at least a substantial and fairly vocal part of the president's voting base are people who are critics of government and probably would like to see at least some segments of government shut down and never reopen. It's a little bit different of a circumstance this time around. I think if this shutdown is allowed to go on and on and on, fewer and fewer people will have that attitude because they will see more of a direct impact in their lives. But at least for the time that this shutdown has been going forward, there is a portion of the Republican voting base, and certainly among the most vocal supporters of President Donald Trump, who don't really mind the federal government being shut down and would hope that some of it will never come back. My guess is that's not going to happen. And of course, once things reopen, anyone who has been without pay, they're going to get their pay restored. It's not as if they will eat the time off. They'll get the pay for the time that they were out, and that'll be part of any deal, I'm certain. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens once the shutdown ends. How long do people remember it, and will the politicians who are involved in this pay a price when people go to the polls again, which is going to be about a year from now?
Well, and I guess that brings us to my final question is, what do you hope folks take away from this experience, in the sense that, we probably have multiple generations of folks who are watching this, some who, to your point, have only known life with government shutdowns, some who know what it's like before the constant, is it going to shut down? Is it not going to shut down type of feeling? What do you hope folks take away from this experience?
Well, there are at least a couple of takeaways that I would say, one of which I think is probably pie in the sky, and that is for people to learn a little bit more about how their federal government operates, get a lesson in Civics 101 so they can understand why something like this happens, the mechanics of the House versus the Senate, the role of the filibuster, so they will know that it's not just Republicans, that there is a major role in this of the Democrats in the Senate using the filibuster to help try to get some of the things that they want that the Republicans don't want. That would be one thing. But I think the second thing that I think is a little bit more realistic, perhaps not entirely 100% realistic, but more realistic, and that would be for people to understand that our Congress, which is ultimately what's responsible here, has done a really poor job in recent years of doing the basics of Congress, of legislating, of passing budgets, of getting the budgets done on time, and not having these sort of cobbled together at the last minute deals that will leave us in a position where we might have a shutdown. If Congress came in at the beginning of its session every time around and said, okay, we're going to get to the business, there'll be other things that we'll work on, but job number one is get a budget done, go through the normal process, get it done on time, find an agreement. If there's a filibuster, you factor in enough time so you can get past the filibuster, you get it done, you get it to the president's desk, and then there's no threat of a shutdown. I don't know that that's very likely to happen. It certainly is not going to happen until people in the United States and in North Carolina ask their representatives and really demand of their representatives that they do this. Unless Congress really has its feet to the fire to have to do the business that it's supposed to do, we're probably going to have at least an occasional threat of a shutdown every once in a while going forward.
Mitch Kokai with John Locke Foundation, thank you so much for your time and your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, come on back anytime. With that, folks, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back in 2 minutes. On the other side, as we speak, NTSB is giving an update on that deadly UPS plane crash in Louisville, Kentucky from yesterday. So we're going to get to that once again in 2 minutes. All right, thanks so much for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. I'm Vanessa Rufus. As we mentioned before we went to break, we've got NTSB officials as we speak giving an update on yesterday's deadly UPS plane crash in Louisville, Kentucky. Let's get to that right now.
Don't know until it gets to Washington, D.C. I will tell you that they're manufactured to a very specific standard. Luckily, they were not in a post-impact fire for multiple days or on the bottom of the ocean. So while the fire may have been intense, it is built to withstand that. And once we get them to D.C. and we can open them up and take these steps, and sometimes we have to take multiple steps. Now, it will be multiple, or at least several days before we have a readout of those, because as we take them apart, we need to let some of our groups go through and do what's called audition them, and then they'll come up with a potential or partial transcript looking for identifying markers that we need to delve into further while we're on the ground. So, and as always, we will never be releasing the actual audio of any of those conversations out of respect for those who are involved in the aircraft. Yes, sir.
Alex Capriello with News Nation. While the black boxes and the data recorders are certainly built to withstand heat and exposure and the sort of catastrophe that occurred here, can you give us an idea about the rest of the aircraft, the fuselage, if anything exists, and then perhaps even larger point, the difficulty for you and your investigators when there is a debris field that's half a mile long?
So the question is how the rest of the fuselage, the airplane, as it rests right now, what we may have seen, and how it impacts the investigation. We've seen some aerial videos and some photographs. The emergency management here, along with the first responders, have done an amazing job. We've been working with them since we've gotten on the ground. They have some command posts set up, and I just want to applaud them for not only the work they've done and the work they are doing and the courtesies they're providing us, along with the UPS staff and everyone here at the airport. But to answer the ultimate question, there are a lot of different parts of this airplane in different places. I mean, whenever you have a post-impact to not only structures but also to the terrain, you have to analyze why it came there, and then how do you recover it correctly in order to analyze it. So I can't give you a real good definition of what it is. There's a lot of different parts. It doesn't complicate it to where it's not recoverable. A mile and a half, a half a mile is a pretty large distance, but we have to be very cautious. The main thing we're also worried about are the safety of not only the investigators, but the first responders that are there. We know that there's been some shelter in places in the area. We also know that while the fire departments were working throughout the night, there were occasionally little flare-ups in different spots. So they're having to constantly monitor that to make sure it's safe for someone to get in. So it may not be the length of the debris field. It may be where the debris field is in, say, a recycling facility or another location, and the amount, of course, fuel that the plane was carrying. Those can all add to the complexity of an investigation. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jackie from the Epic Times. Is there a chance that staffing shortages caused by the government shutdown in any capacity could be tied to this?
So the question was, are we aware of any staffing shortages because of the government shutdown? We are not at this time. SDF Tower, from what we can see and what we've been told, was at its proper complement. I don't have the exact records, but I will put you to the fact that we have formed groups in areas that we're focusing information on. We have not formed an ATC group. We have specialists in that, but at this point it has not elevated itself to the point to where we feel they need an entire working group. And I would go back to the same thing in regard to the shutdown. Our investigators have been working since the day the shutdown occurred. I've been working every day since then. We've only recalled a few individuals yesterday just to handle some of the logistics of our travel and our movements. But we have everyone we need and then some in order to make sure we're performing this investigation. Yes, sir.
Dave Mattingly, Wave News in Louisville. I'm looking for some context. How rare is it that you see a plane with this much fuel on it going down and creating the fire that we saw here?
Okay, so the question is how much fire in regard to this fuel load, and how in the United States we don't see it very much, which is great, and it means that the recommendations, we've made over 15,000 recommendations in our 65-year history. We have about an 82% success ratio. We have a mantra that used to be in front of our training facility, and it's from tragedy we draw knowledge to improve the safety for all. And so for every tragedy we've had, we draw more knowledge and we try to learn from that. And we hope that we don't repeat the same mistakes. So in this case, I'm sure we're going to learn some new things. We're going to make some recommendations and some findings. What they are yet, we do not know. But I would say a freighter that's fully loaded, that's going to Honolulu, is going to have a large amount of fuel. And that obviously was part of the post-accident response. Yes, sir.
John, I think Greg expected was Louisville. What's the rotating speed of a fully fueled MD-11? How fast is it going to take off?
The question was, what is the rotation speed?
Takeoff speed.
Takeoff speed? 175, 180?
Off the top of my head.
I don't have the exact figures for you. I apologize. I'm not a pilot. We will be looking at that. Typically, you're looking at speeds in the 150s to 180s, 190s, but I don't want to give you a definitive number because I would be guessing. And some of those are based upon exactly what's occurring at what point of flight that it's occurring. So there's a lot of different things that go into it in addition to the weight and balance. All of these have been mapped out over decades to specifically know how much thrust and speed is needed to obtain lift and to achieve it.
All right, so folks, once again, just a bit of that NTSB update on that deadly UPS plane crash from yesterday in Louisville, Kentucky. As we get more information from officials, we'll definitely bring that to you here on Live Impact News. And with that, it is time for a quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, folks. Of course, another big headline that we continue to keep an eye on, the government shutdown, now the longest ever in U.S. history at 36 days. We'll dive into some more nuances of what's going on right now and where we go from here. We'll see you in 2. Welcome back to Live Impact News, everybody. As we mentioned, we are keeping an eye on the very latest with the ongoing government shutdown, the longest now in U.S. history at 36 days. And at last check, there were lawmakers in negotiations right now, an attempt to try to end this, but it's yet to be seen how successful they'll be, and if so, over what timeline that deal could take. We are chatting right now with political science professor from North Carolina State University, Stephen Green. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen. We appreciate your time.
You bet. Good to be with you.
Yeah, good to see you again. So I guess we'll start off obviously with the big headline, the fact this is now historic in nature as far as this shutdown is concerned, 36 days. What do you think folks are feeling at this point? I mean, we talked about, in prior segments, how this is something that is kind of, recent in the sense that we see these shutdowns more and more. We're now at 36 days. I mean, how big of a deal is this?
Well, the issue is that for some people, it's a really big deal. right? If you are a government employee, this is a really big deal. Probably mentioned before, I have family in Northern Virginia where a huge portion of the people are employed by the government or directly impacted by that employment, and that's a really big deal. If you work for the TSA and you are working without necessarily being paid, that's a really big deal. But the truth is, I'll be honest, for me and for my life, being a professor here at NC State University, I suspect most people just working at WCNC, you're able to go about your life with pretty minimal disruption or negative impact from the shutdown. And as long as the costs of the shutdown are concentrated in that pretty small group, and most of us can be like, yeah, things are fine, or, well, I had a friend who had this big delay at the airport, then there's not a lot of incentive for people to really get angry and start pushing our politicians to say, hey, we've got to do something about this. And again, there are people saying that, but most of us are not that directly affected. And again, and I think one of the effects of us having so many of these shutdowns in recent years is that they have come up with ways to try and diminish that direct impact on a lot of voters.
You talked about the impacts and how for some it is monumental. I mean, we have people who are going without paychecks at this point and trying to figure out where money is going to come from. And, it gets me kind of curious about the timeline of this, because we know when we were talking about this at the very, very beginning, we knew that there was kind of a runway of about 2 weeks where there would be the paycheck that the person was living on last, the last paycheck that they got. And then after 2 weeks, would be the point at which they're going forward now without any pay. So here we are at 36 days. Are we expecting any sort of compiling impacts either to these folks who are directly impacted or to the American people? How sustainable is this at this point to continue on day after day? Are there going to be different layers or levels to this as we continue on if we do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, different parts of the government are operating on different timelines. And we just saw most recently the SNAP benefits, that is the food stamp assistance to many Americans, look like they were going to be cut, but now there's a court fight and they will be getting those, I think. But, different effects kick in at different times. You've got a transportation workforce when you look at things like air traffic controllers, which are stretched thin and increasingly stretched thin. And at some point, does that reach a breaking point? Probably. So the truth is, yeah, there is this cumulative effect, and more things will go wrong, more things will get worse. I think the good news is that the elections last night seemed to be a real kick in the pants, and certainly President Trump has talked about trying to resolve this quickly. From what I've read today, it sounds like congressional leaders in both parties are looking to come towards some sorts of resolution where they can get the government back open. And obviously that would be great if they can reach some kind of deal that both sides feel like they are comfortable with.
Now, my next question is admittedly kind of a niche question, but it is a question we received nonetheless. Folks want to know why lawmakers are getting paid right now when other people who are working are not.
Because they've written the law that way. I mean, you can, because we've had so many shutdowns, they have specific laws, governing how all of this is going to happen during a shutdown. And, I don't know the backstory of that, but yeah, that's just part of it. And again, some people are getting paid, some people are working without getting paid, some people are not working and will get back pay. I mean, there's just all kinds of permutations to this, honestly, that, looked at from the 20,000 foot view are probably not fair. But, it's certainly not fair that a fairly small group of Americans is bearing the brunt of the impact from this.
So it sounds like essentially there are different pots of money, if you will, or different, spending buckets, and lawmakers happen to be in a different one. It's just, it's interesting. And like I mentioned, it was a question that we got, so appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, lawmakers insulate themselves in certain ways. And, people have talked about for years about limiting their ability to trade, to make certain kind of stock trades and other ways in which they can enrich themselves. But I want to say on some level, the voters don't care enough about these issues to actually vote anybody out of office for it. And until that happens, if somebody were going to be voted out of office by their opponent saying, look, this person took their salary during the government shutdown while all these other hardworking Americans couldn't, and that would actually cost them a large number of votes, well, then we'd get change. But the truth is, when you've got, I don't know, probably over 90% of Americans simply voting for the R or the D next to the name, and you say, well, I don't love that this guy did it, but he's my Democrat, or I don't love that this representative did this, but she's the Republican representing me, we're not going to get that kind of change.
So, I mean, I guess to go back and really maybe just jump off of your last point, but go back to what you mentioned about the kick in the pants. Obviously we had election night. It seemed to be a successful night for Democrats on various levels of government. And I'm just curious how much of a role the shutdown might have played in that, in your opinion. And yeah.
It almost surely did in Virginia, again, which is so dependent on government workers, and the winning candidate there, Abigail Spanberger, had a very large margin, which almost surely was certainly partly based on the shutdown. But, Democrats had a very good night in New Jersey, which is less related. They had a good night in all sorts of places. And, I think the shutdown may have played some small part of that, but I expect it's more just dissatisfaction with President Trump generally. And the shutdown is probably, I think, just one part of that.
So where do you think we go from here at this point? As you mentioned, there are negotiations that are happening, presumably as we speak. I haven't seen any updates saying that they've come out of the room and they've got an update for us. But, do you think that there is an agreement that's imminent based on what you're deducing by watching the headlines or seeing how leaders are addressing the situation or their tone today?
I feel like, my problem is I'm always an optimist. But I feel like there is. I feel like having this election happen gives both sides an excuse to say, well, the ground has changed and we need to have an agreement now. And even if the Democrats are giving in, shall we say, on some degree, and I think they'll need to, because that's what a negotiation is, both sides have to give in, it will be in the context of, look, hey, we won big in the election, and we really just need to get this done now while we have the upper hand after that. And Republicans can say, look, we lost the election, things changed, so we now have to really negotiate harder and find some sort of agreement. And again, I think whatever deal is made, both sides will be able to say, hey, here are things we got that we wanted. We did not totally lose. You can't have a deal where one side is just like, yeah, we quit, the other side just beat us. And I think having this election kind of, shakes up the board enough, if you will, that both sides can hopefully come to some agreement where they say, well, we lost some stuff, but here's what we got. And hopefully the election will be a catalyst for that.
I've said this before, but I fully believe it. I think we can all be students of political science and learn more about how our country works and how, local government works and state government. Pretend we're all your students. What lessons do you want us to take away from this experience? What do you want us to know or learn more about after having gone through this?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. Because, I would say, part of me wants to say, well, government matters. But again, so much of it is that they have sheltered most Americans from the actual suffering. That it is a pretty small minority of Americans who are really bearing the costs of this. And honestly, one of the things I always talk to my students about is that when you have a small group that's suffering and everybody else is benefiting, the politics of this are tough because we're all, not all, but most of us are able to carry on. So, when shutdowns have ended in the past, it's because the pain has been more widely spread. And, if we want this to end in some level, and then I think it will, but if more people were feeling the pain, and in some of the previous shutdowns you did have wider pain, then that led to quicker endings of them.
So essentially understand the consequences of,
Yeah.
actions on the government level. All right, Professor Stephen Green, thank you so much for your time. Great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks.
All right. Well, folks, we are going to take a break here on Live Impact News. We'll be back in a couple minutes. I think we'll take it to a local level when we return. We've got an update to share from the Charlotte area, an investigation by our Nate Morabito. So we'll see you soon. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great afternoon. You're joining us here on Live Impact News, and I'm Vanessa Rufus. We wanted to get back now to the Charlotte area to give some updates on an investigation our Nate Morabito has been working on, and this regards an organization in the community. So this is Heal Charlotte, and this is a group that helps folks who are in need of the community, unhoused folks, and we've done a lot of reporting on different angles, if you will. But Nate is joining us right now in the Live Impact News studio with an update on a situation that you had previously reported on regarding the funding that it was getting from the city, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, Heal Charlotte received $2.25 million through federal taxpayer money that was administered through the city that went to leasing the old Baymont Inn, where several people could live for free and other people would pay kind of subsidized housing. That was open for a year, and after the program ended in April, the city kind of started monitoring that contract and flagged some concerns around record keeping and accounting. That was the initial story that we aired a couple weeks ago. Because what the city has told Heal Charlotte and its founder, Greg Jackson, is for now, you will not be allowed to receive any future funding from the city of Charlotte. That's significant. And you will not be able to unless you address our concerns. And so a few days ago, I received a new kind of letter that the city sent to Heal Charlotte saying, you know, despite what he has told us, Greg Jackson, and what he has told the city, it's not enough. We still have a lot of concerns that you've not addressed. We still have a lot of recommendations that you haven't addressed. We want you to keep working on that, or else you're not going to be able to get additional funding. Now, of course, one of my main jobs here is on the Where's the Money team, right? Government accountability, government watchdog when it comes to money. So once this comes to my attention, I'm keeping my eyes and ears open for other things too. And that's when we became aware of this. And I'm going to show this to you. This is a lawsuit that was filed in 2018. And the lawsuit was filed against a bunch of people, including Heal Charlotte and its founder, Greg Jackson. This lawsuit was filed in 2020, I'm sorry. There was a drowning in 2018. There was a 17-year-old who drowned at a university area condo complex where Heal Charlotte was holding a summer camp. Okay? So this lawsuit's filed in 2020, basically accusing several parties of negligence. This teen essentially died that day. He actually died at the hospital a few days later, but there was no adult, is what the complaint alleges, at the pool when he started drowning, and it took a while for anyone to get there and start helping. The complaint says that Greg Jackson got there about 5 minutes after he was pulled out and started trying to revive him. Here's why this all matters. Eventually, everybody else settled this lawsuit. But Greg Jackson and Heal Charlotte never formally followed the court process to answer the complaint. So what happened is in June 2023, a judge said, you owe more than $900,000 to the family of this teenager. So that's $900,000 in June. In September of that same year, the city council here in Charlotte approved this $2.25 million contract. And our question was, well, was the city doing its due diligence here? Did this come up? Did they flag this? It was in the court file in June. And I just found out a few minutes ago from a city spokesperson they were not aware of this. Council members were not aware that there was this judgment back then. Now we have hindsight, right? So this is where my job, I'm at an advantage to some degree when we look back on things with scrutiny, because we know what has happened since. Record keeping and accounting concerns. This judgment has now grown to more than $1 million. As of today, it's still not paid by Heal Charlotte and Greg Jackson. And I had about a half an hour conversation with Greg yesterday about this. And he says, we're kind of in a situation now where I don't have much money left. The banks have seized some of his money and some of Heal Charlotte's money, more than $100,000. And the time to settle is kind of passed because he's got this judgment. And he told me I very well may have to file for bankruptcy. So if you think about how complex this whole situation is, we're talking about a well-known community organization that has done a lot of good. We've heard a lot of good stories about Heal Charlotte over the years. And my colleagues have told them, right? There was this hotel lease that it entered into. And then there was, after that lease ended, which was also critical this summer, another organization came in, run by Cedric Dean, who's now under federal investigation for healthcare fraud, allegedly targeting the homeless. And a woman and her child were found dead in that motel. And I do know, Greg and I talked about it, they were former clients of his.
Yeah.
And he told me he transitioned over to Cedric Dean's organization, and they passed away. And so what we should demand as a public is that people, especially the most vulnerable people, do not fall through the cracks, right? And when we talked to Luana Mayfield, the council member, a few weeks ago for the original story, that's kind of what she told us. Like, this has really opened the city's eyes, this whole situation, because what was meant to be transitional housing turned out to be a year of housing for people. Some people didn't get out of there. I talked to one woman, Ursula Baker, who, despite what she tells me was her best efforts, couldn't get out of that hotel. She's at a different hotel now. That's not the end goal. And so I think that the big takeaway here, and the city spokesperson just essentially told me this a minute ago, is that there needs to be a bit more oversight and maybe more help and support with these kind of programs, because as Luana told me, taxpayer money is essentially people's lives here. And we're talking about people's lives that we were trying to positively affect. And I'm sure there were some that were positively affected by this. But you just go back and you say, were there red flags? And again, I have hindsight, and so now we're asking those questions. Were you aware of this? We know the answer is no. Why weren't you aware of this? Should we be doing better vetting ahead of time just to address this? Because if we're now finding out that Heal Charlotte may have to file for bankruptcy, was that program ever going to had the potential to be sustainable for beyond a year? You know, there was talk that in the application process, Heal Charlotte said there were some thoughts about trying to keep it open beyond a year. That didn't happen. We started hearing from people that were concerned that they were not going to be able to stay there potentially, or they're going to have to move to a different hotel room or whatever, and then we know what happened over the summer. And so ultimately, it is our responsibility as journalists to ask these questions, because the next time we have an opportunity to do good, we want to limit the risk, right? And this is especially tricky because there's multiple organizations involved. There's city money involved. There's federal money involved. There's accounting involved. You know, this was an unprecedented amount of money for a nonprofit that hadn't received that kind of public money before. And it's something that I try to tell people a lot. Once public dollars get involved, the expectations are much higher and the scrutiny and criticism gets much higher. So it's very complex, but also very important, and we're putting this story together for tonight at 11.
Okay. So I'm just trying to kind of wrap my mind around all of the layers here. The lawsuit is something you just happened to find while looking into other concerns.
Yes, I had already reported
Yeah.
about the reporting. I did not know about this lawsuit until
Wow.
fairly recently.
But it was, I don't want to say an easy search, but you were able to find it with...
Once I became aware of the lawsuit,
Okay.
yes. But, you know, now we have easy access to court records, where in 2023, maybe we didn't have as much
Yeah.
access. You have to go to the courthouse. But we also run background checks all the time.
Mhm.
And a lot of times these kind of things will pop up in a background search. But yeah, it's all out there.
Yeah.
It's all, and I, you know, based on what I was communicating with the clerk's office, most of the records were already uploaded roughly a year ago for public viewing in that file. But you can go and look right now and see how much is owed. And there are some that I've just gotten access to, some of these documents. But it's really convoluted, as we talked about. I mean,
Yeah.
these other people that were defendants, they settled, and it's unclear kind of what happened here, too, because Greg Jackson says he didn't know there was the lawsuit, but these court records suggest he did know and maybe he signed for it. Nonetheless, he didn't follow the proper court procedure, and whether or not he was negligent, the judge still ordered the judgment because of procedural issues there. And again, if you take it back to our money being used for programs, when city leaders voted to give $2.25 million to a nonprofit in our area, they had no clue that that nonprofit owed almost $1 million.
Was there any indication that, you know, the city had ideas of how to improve upon that going forward?
I've been keeping tabs a bit on what the oversight is moving forward. And back in September, the City Council approved some new oversight regulations for its organizations that receive city money. You know, they want to make sure their finances are in order and that they're in good standing. We don't know whether or not Heal Charlotte's finances were in good standing. We don't know that, right? We just know now that there was a judgment against them. But that is something they want to do moving forward. It's, you know, if you look at when that money was coming about, too, I mean, this is on the heels of the pandemic. 2023? When did we get out of the pandemic? I don't even remember anymore. I mean, it was around
Sounds like
time.
that was like kind of just after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had all of these loosening of the grips at the federal level to try to get money out as quickly as possible, right? Through all the loans, that federal loans were going out, the small business grants, you know, and then after the fact, people started saying, wait, we were kind of a little bit too loose with that money. And this may have been an effect of that. You know, a really good idea to try to get money out to nonprofits to help the people they already know that exist. And again, I'm sure there was some success there. But when you have fewer restrictions and controls, there is more ability for things to happen. And ultimately, because we know 2 people died this summer, is why all of us have been paying especially closer attention to what happened at that motel.
Yeah. All right, so remind us when we can see your piece here.
Yep, this is on TV at 11, but it's on WCNC.com right now.
Okay. Nate, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on and telling us about your investigation. You do so much great work, so.
Appreciate you all.
Thank
Thanks.
you. All right, folks. We got just a couple moments left here on Live Impact News. Jeb, do we want to do stocks? I know we're getting close to closing bell. We've got some green on the board right now. Live look at the Dow Jones Index, poised to end the day up more than 200 points. We're seeing a bump with equities as the Supreme Court is weighing the president's tariffs. There were some tough questions asked, so investors, of course, always paying keen attention to any sort of trade talks, trade-related topics, and so we did see a rise there. So Dow actually bumped at one point up 300 points. You can see it's kind of softened a bit now as we get closer to the closing bell, but S&P 500 up 27 points, NASDAQ up 150 points approximately, and we will be keeping an eye on how things stand on that tariff discussion on the Supreme Court. So with that, we'll let you know we've got the news at 4 coming up. A lot of interesting topics. Of course, we're coming on the heels of an election day, so we've got some results to dive into and impacts going forward. There you saw for a brief period of time folks getting ready to ring the bell. Ring Central ringing the closing bell. How about that? And looks like we're just about time. As they figure things out, folks, we'll just let you know. Keep it here on WCNC Plus for the 4 o'clock news. We'll be back with Live Impact at 7 o'clock. And just before that, of course, is our weather stream. So we always hope that you keep us on all day long. We'll have updates for you, of course, monitoring the latest